Welcome everyone to the May 4th, 2023 Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee report. A couple of things I want to remind us of. When you come forward tonight, please state your name and your position. Also, I'd like to, hearing no objections, move our proposed budget overview, item 30 to item 31, just swap those and do that last. And also 31B, I think will be presented by the Sheriff's Department as part of a grant. But Mr. Spence, when you do your report, let's move that up with yours also. That way you won't have to hang around unless you want to. But having said that, first thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes, and I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman, Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move for approval of April the 6th minutes. I reviewed those, but I don't think it'd be proper for me to do the one for the 9th because I was sitting in for you when you had to leave, so I will make a motion for April 6th.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes for April the 6th. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, next thing up on the agenda is the investment report. Call on Mr. Beatty.
I'm Ted Beatty, the trustee. Our LGIP rate went up to 471 basis points for last month. Our bank rate was 4.5, but as of today, our bank rate has gone to a little over 472 on our idle funds. We had one bid last month at 510 basis points, and I'll tell you today on money so far this month, we've done some at 5.28 and 5.37 and a half. So rates have snuck up a little bit on short term, and then some of that, I'll be honest with you, is callable, but it's still the best rate today. Even if it gets called, we're getting more money. If they were to call it on the first call date, it's still the best investment option that we've got. So those rates are a little better. That's my report, sir.
Any questions on the report, Commissioner?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion and a second.
Quick question. I've got a couple calls, Tab, about the banking issues that seem to be kind of pervasive at this point. And kind of, can you speak briefly to our diversification or something along those lines? How we go, what our process is to kind of assure that we won't be affected by that? Great
question. All of our money has to either be insured by the FDIC in banks, and then I'll speak to the other. Has to be insured by the FDIC or has to be collateralized at 105% collateral to what we have in the bank. We require the depository institutions to which we have over the $250,000 FDIC guarantee to be a part of the state collateral pool. So they report to the state those funds, and the state make sure that that collateral is there and available. So for the money, which we have quite a lot of money above the FDIC insurance, there is collateral that's there. So if the bank were to fail, there is assets larger than what we have on deposit that would pay Rutherford County out, so we don't lose money even if the FDIC were not to say we're going to insure deposits above the 250. There is collateral in our name or in the state pool that protects us. The other investments we have that are not in banking are things like treasuries and agencies. Treasuries are implicitly guaranteed by the federal government. Agencies are explicitly, treasuries are explicitly guaranteed by the federal government. Agencies are implicitly guaranteed but are considered safe investments, and we do use agencies and treasuries. But in the banks, there is collateral for what's not insured by FDIC.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was looking back, and we never did approve March 9th minutes.
And so I just wanted to let you know that and put that on the books.
If you're willing to make a motion, we can do that now, or we can do that at our next meeting. That's up to you.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve it and get
Okay,
it
I have a
off.
motion on those minutes. Do I hear a second? And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes for March 9th are also approved. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, next up is our fund condition report. Michael?
Okay. So I'm going to cover some stuff during this report, and then once we do the budget overview, I'll cover a couple additional things that'll be more pertinent to that. But the first thing I'll start off with is our fund cash balances. And at the end of April, we had $494,844,415.84 in operating funds and $29,091,410 in borrowed funds. So that was for the end of April. And I will add, while we're talking about cash balances, I will add our investment income is significantly up, thanks to the trustee's office and their investments that they're making. So that has really helped us this year, and it has helped the budget next year, as you will see when we get there. The next thing I want to cover is our revenue that we've got. I will note that development tax is still down a little bit. It's down 2.67% from the prior year. So we have noticed some slowing in revenue from development tax and from the Register of Deeds office when it comes to real estate transactions. That revenue is slowing. I will add some good news, though, that our hotel motel tax continues to be up 16.28%, so that is good news. And our sales tax overall is still up a little over 8%. However, our situs sales tax, which is the county collections, was down 17% last month. So we are noticing some slowing and some sales tax growth, as I've kind of talked about. Now, we're still up for the year in our situs sales tax collections, almost 8%, so we're still good there. I just want to note that we are noticing some slowing sales tax collections, as you would expect in the current interest rate environment we're in. The other thing I want to touch on is collections. So now that we've gotten the majority of property tax in, we have collected about 1.3% less than what we did in the prior year as compared to assessed value. We've collected more in dollar amount this year because the assessed value went up, but from the billed collections, we've collected about 1.3% less. So me and the trustee did talk today, and we really think that's contributed to one or two outstanding tax bills, one of them being under appeal out of Smyrna. But with that, that is my report, and I will take any questions.
Last month you mentioned the county general as being a concern, and I wonder if you could address that and how it might affect the bond rating.
So I was going to address that when we got to the budget overview, and I was also going to address what's the benefit of our AAA versus a AA, and I can put a dollar amount to that tonight. But I will address that a little bit. I will say I did run the numbers as of today. Now keep in mind, I want to put a full disclosure here that the municipal bond market indices change daily. And obviously with the federal fund raised, I believe it was 25 basis points yesterday or the day before, I think it was yesterday. So keep in mind, all of this is still fluid. So we pulled information as of today, as of this morning actually, as close as it could be. Now, please keep all of that in mind because it could change tomorrow. I just don't want somebody holding me to this exact percentage. But on a 20-year bond issue at roughly $250 million, which is what this body is looking at borrowing over the next 12 to 18 months, our AAA rating versus a AA or AA plus, or AA, I'm sorry, versus a AA has saved us, make sure I get this dollar amount, would save us approximately $6.2 million. Now, that is because our AAA grants us an additional anywhere from 10 basis points to 20 basis points conservatively in savings on better rates. Now, again, those rates fluctuate every day, but when we ran it based on the current bond market this morning, based on estimates, because you won't know exactly until you actually go to the market, so that would look at about a $6 million savings at a 20 basis points different. And that would be, if you went on the low end at a 10 basis points difference, that would be roughly a little over $3 million savings, just over that one debt issuance. So I think it has saved us money keeping a AAA. And then I'll talk a little bit more about fund balances percentages and where we would be at once we get to the budget overview, and you'll have all that in front of you.
And do you have any other concerns? I mean, other than county general?
For this year, no. For this year, I feel pretty good. I think a lot of it depends on where we go with this budget cycle. I think we're at a really pivotal point. Some tough decisions will have to be made. I think depending on the decisions, the outcomes, I would be concerned with debt service, depending on what we decide to do next year with the budget.
Any other questions from the committee? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
A motion and a second. Mr. Irvin, any further discussion? All in favor of the report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Michael. Okay, next up is our risk management.
Ed Elam, Rutherford County Insurance and Risk Management Director. So for our 264 fund, the month of April, revenue was $1,759,310. Expenses, $1,938,026. Revenue less expenditures for the month of April was a negative $178,716. For the total for the calendar year 2023, you had revenue $8,716,475, expenditures $13,107,802, revenue less expenditures a negative $4,391,327. For the fiscal year comparison, 22-23, you have revenue at $47,001,315, expenses $54,145,990, revenue less expenditures a negative $7,144,675. On the 266 fund, for the month of April 2023, workers' comp, you showed $0. OJI, you showed $62,101.93 for a total of $62,101.93. The year-to-date workers' comp, $1,358,957.31. OJI, $468,935.33. Total for the year-to-date, $1,827,892.64. The county attorney expense for the month of April, $24,359.37. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
You've heard the report. Are there any questions? Hearing none, will entertain a motion to approve the report. Mr. Piercy moved.
Second.
Mr. Johnson second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Please continue.
All right, the next item you have in front of you, you have a exhibit from CCMSI that on our bids on our property and casualty that was opened in purchasing, presented to the insurance committee, and then presented again back to the purchasing committee. And on the 7th page, you will see the recommendation coming out of purchasing and to be brought forward to this committee. And at the bottom, you see it's a total of $4,088,364. On property insurance, the recommendation is to go with Travelers. Casualty and insurance, the recommendation is to go with Princeton. And then excess carriers to go with Hanover Auto Excess. And then on the crime, to go with Travelers. Cyber liability is to go with Homeland. Dental and medical profession is to go with Admiral. The firefighters' accident coverage is to go with Provident. And the workers' compensation surety bond is to go with Safety National.
Okay, a couple of y'all have seen this presentation. I know I've seen it a couple of times. I know Chairman Phillips has. Are there any questions for the director? Irvin?
Ed, could you provide a sense for how we got to this point? In other words, kind of the process, and just a thumbnail more than anything else, but just the process so we can, are we being asked to approve this today? Or are we being asked to take a look at it for approval later? What's the?
We're asking for approval. This will go to the full commission. Some of these bids, if we put this off, and that would cause us headaches down the road here and being able to get it in a timely fashion. So, yes, we're asking for a vote on this tonight.
Yeah, it would have an effective date of July 1st.
Okay, so
And a lot of times with the insurance, and I do have Janet Cook in the back with CCMSI, if you have any questions on policy, stuff like that. But insurance does not like to give you much more than a 60-day quote. Most of them, they don't like it more than 30-day quote. So RFP went out. They were bids turned in, and I think I added to this exhibit that wasn't in the purchasing committee, but the very next page after this, you'll see all the companies that declined, and then the ones that were quoted. And there's a pretty long list of those. But RFP, then RFPs are opened by purchasing, then it goes back to the insurance committee. Insurance committee looks at it, makes a recommendation, then it comes back to purchasing, which we did this week. Then it comes to budget, and then it comes to the full commission. And that's kind of the approval process.
we're being asked to make a recommendation to approve for the full commission.
We are. Like I said, having sat in through this, being on purchasing, of course, Chairman Gooch also on purchasing, so several of us have seen this a few times. And of course, it's been bid, and then they've evaluated it and came back to us. And just to be frank with you, one of the concerns I had, and also the mayor, when we opened these, is the fact that some of the instances we only had one bidder. And we are working on being able to make a change so that we can get more competitive bidding in this process, which I think would probably help us.
And to kind of back up about 2 or 3 years, the Rutherford County was with Travelers. Then we went to APIP, and APIP was with us, I think, maybe a year. And then APIP pulled out of the market, and they pulled out of the market at basically this stage 2 years ago. So then we scrambled around to get the next bid to come in and give us, to fall back to that quote, which was Liberty Mutual. And then this year, Liberty Mutual has pulled out and is not quoting it the way the RFPs were. A lot of times, in the world of insurance, if you've had a lot of claims and stuff like that, people don't want to quote you anymore. That's not really the case here with Liberty Mutual because we've only had 2 small claims. Ag Center was one off the top of my head. And I think maybe, I can't remember the other one, but it just haven't been 2 big claims. But the financial market is tightening up, and insurance companies are really assessing their risk. And that's why Liberty Mutual has pulled out.
Is the premium increasing significantly, or is it more level?
No, it is very significant. It is, if you look on that comparison on that, I think, page 7, you can see the expiring premium, and then you can see the annual premium for property and all the rest of them. combined. And then the total of all of this together, you can see down at the bottom the difference in expiring premiums and then what the new one is. Now, keep in mind, in this quote is the 2 public safety buildings. It would be the one-stop building will be added to this. There's a couple of additions that the schools had that was a partial year, so this will be a full year in here. And then there's the COVID money. There was a lot of contents. I think most of that was OIT and stuff. So you'll see an increase in contents as trying to make sure we've got coverage that we need.
I think part of the problem that we're running into as far as bidders is that we have grown so large now. How many buildings do you say we insure now? 370 or somewhere in there?
What did I say? 300 and something buildings, 370 something buildings, I
It's
think.
between 300 and 370, somewhere in there. But just that volume will deter some of the companies from bidding, and we're looking at ways to help that in the future.
Yeah, and one of the things, talking with Commissioner P. is trying to layer some things. Again, if you try to layer the schools with property and then do the county with property, you take, for instance, Blackman. I mean, it's a possibility, but if you take the Blackman and a tornado came through, if you had the schools with one company and then you had the government with the other, if they hit like Blackman Elementary School and then they also hit maybe the Sort building, you would have 2 retentions. So if your retention's and 100,000 or 250,000, then you would have 2 of them with, with 2 different companies. I will say that we will take a harder look this year because of this increase on, and come back to say on our retentions, do you want to go from 200, 250 to $1 million? But most of your claims are going to be under $1 million unless it is a catastrophic event.
Well,
Thank you. I'm fine. Thank you.
My point was, it's not because of the many claims that we've had. It's because of basically our growth there. Having said that, are any questions for our director? Ed, do you think it would be a good idea to let Janet do an overview for these guys? Would you like to hear an overview of what we've got going? I see some nods, so.
I've seen your agenda, so I'll leave whatever you want.
I know, I've asked her to keep this brief, but can I hear a motion to suspend the rules to allow Janet Cook to speak? Okay, I have a motion to suspend. A second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Janet, please join us.
Janet is our property broker of record with CCMSI.
Good evening. I think everyone has the handout, and basically the increase in the property, if you look at the very first portion, it looks at the exposure, and it's breaking it down by the county building values, the contents for the county, then you see the school building values and the contents values, and then you see the specific amounts for the insurance for vehicles. And if you look to the far right, the difference there, the increase just this year for the property coverages was $285,277,764. You'll see to the far right the percentages of increases. So it went from 16.77% on the county building values. The contents was up about 5.90%. And then the school building values were up about 15.09%. School contents values were up about 17%. So the overall increase on the property was about 15.8%. The second page goes into the expiring. This is going into the property. This was Liberty Mutual, which was what Mr. Elam just mentioned. They did not provide a renewal quote. The expiring, you'll see The total insured values were at $1,853,404,185, and you'll see the premium there to the far right at $1,121,989, and then you'll see the new total insured values at $2,134,998,106, and then the new premium at the $2.392402. Again, 113% difference there. If you get into the next section, that is your casualty. It goes into the general liability, the public officials liability, employment practices, educators legal, auto liability, auto physical damage, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, crime coverage, your law enforcement liability, your excess liability, and then your surety bond on the workers' comp. The package for the top portion of that is with Princeton. That is your current carrier. You currently have $5 million limits with a $500,000 retention. You'll see the premiums there, the expiring premiums. The renewal limits are identical at the $5 million with the $500,000 retention. You'll see the general liability in the package portion up about 12.17%. The crime coverage is about 1% increase. The law enforcement is up about 1.05%. The excess liability about 1.2%. And then the surety bond is actually flat. There's no increase in premium on it. But all of the limits and retentions are identical on the casualty side of the house. When you get into the next section, which is with Provident, that is the Rutherford County Firefighters and Emergency Responders accident policy. There's a $50,000 limit on that. The expiring premium was at $4,024. The renewal premium is at $4,182. And then they also quoted some options for $75,000 limit and $100,000 limit. And then the next section is Admiral Insurance Company. This is your the dentist for the professional liability. Limits were at $1 million per occurrence with the $3 million aggregate. That was the same as expiring. The retention is $2,500, and that premium is flat. It's the same as expiring at $6,245. We did get several quotes on the cyber liability. That is on the next section. The current carrier was Cowbell with a $1 million limit and a retention of $100,000. Their expiring was $68,596. The renewal quote was $73,919. Then we also received a quote from Homeland Insurance Company, which was the recommendation coming from the insurance committee and also purchasing. Their limit was $1 million with a $250,000 retention with a premium of $55,000. We also received a quote from Home Site Insurance Company. They quoted a primary limit of $5 million with a $250,000 retention at $149,342.94. Then they also quoted an excess above that $5 million primary, which would give you a $10 million cyber liability. That premium is $130,540.22. We also received a quote for Crum & Forster with a $5 million limit and a $250,000 premium at $163,372.48. The next section just goes into the recommendations as they came from the different committees from, as Mr. Elam mentioned, everything in that last column that's highlighted is what the recommendations were coming from the other committees. And then the last page just goes into the markets that we did approach. There were, actually there was one left off here. There was about 31 different markets that we had approached to quote the coverages. And again, as been mentioned, a lot of it is due to the growth and the size of the county, and you just typically don't see that even in the larger metropolitan counties.
Any questions for Ms. Cook? Just just so you know, there were instances where we only had one bidder. However, we had in excess, I think, of 30 different people that we have reached out to. So this is not something that we just threw out. I mean, please.
If I can also mention, the Tennessee Risk Pool Fund, Trust Fund, we did reach out to them also, and they didn't want to give us a quote on it. So, Michael, when we opened the bids, I wanted to make sure we did our due diligence, so I knew Michael had worked with the Tennessee Trust Fund, and I reached out to him and asked him, because he has a relationship with Tom Montgomery, I believe is the guy's name, and so he reached out to them about this also.
Michael?
Yeah, so because our premium did go up, I did reach out to the Tennessee Risk Management Trust to see what their quote would be, because we don't have to bid if we were to go with them. They're allowed to give us a quote. And I will tell you, they could not beat what we've gotten. And I also reached out to some other surrounding school districts and counties, and their premiums also went up this year. So our quote was in line with what other counties and school systems were paying. So it was important to verify that before we even came to purchasing or to the insurance committee, just in case we needed to rebid it or something. But matter of fact, ours was lower than some. So I just want to put that out there.
And Chairman Harris.
Ed, I want to talk about cyber liability. So looking at your proposal right here, did we take the 1 million or the 5 million? According to this, it looks like you took the 1 million. Do y'all feel that that's adequate of coverage? I mean, you are reading the paper, right?
Okay, I am.
All right.
And I'll tell you I'll give you my risk management. I don't like to talk about cyber liability a whole lot on TV, but what I will tell you is the mindset, and I will say with the people we meet with OIT in my office, is that if we're going to put money in something, let's put it in the prevention of it and the tools we need. I don't think you can, I don't know that you can buy enough insurance to prevent somebody from coming in, shutting you down, and we're making sure we have the tools to get back up and running. There's two parts of it, and one is the ransomware, if that's what they do, and the second part is get going again. So, we can do 5 million if that's what your recommendation is. But my thing is that we put the money into the prevention of it, because if you're still going to have to get yourself back up and running again, even when you get the $5 million, if it's ransomware.
So your recommendation is what it is?
Yes, yes. I agree with the purchasing committee and the insurance committee's recommendation.
Any further questions from committee? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and a slow third over there. Are there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch? Yes. Mr. Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Peake?
Yes, motion carries. And I would suggest any of you that have questions on that to get with Cody. I know I've had discussions with him. I know the mayor has discussions. Ed has also, as far as concerns about cyber liability. But he definitely can maybe not assure you of anything, but he can definitely let you know we are working diligently
Yes,
to
and we meet
protect ourselves.
We do meet on a regular basis with the school, sheriff's department, county general. So it's not something that we're just waiting until something happens and then all of a sudden throw up a flag. Anything else?
I believe that's got it.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Ed, Ms. Cook, thank y'all. Okay, next up is item 5, recommendations, item 6, general fund budget transfer for juvenile court. And do we have someone here to do that? Lynn, let me ask you something. Do you know specifically what this is for? You can come on up to the podium. I'm sorry. if we don't know specifically what it's for, I'm going to push it off, but.
So the conversation that I had with the department was that this $1,000 is not new money. The line item that it's coming from will not affect what that line item is for, and that the $1,000 is for furniture for Judge Lampley's office.
I'll leave it up to committee. Y'all want to see this tonight? See a nod or a shake? We're going to put this off. I see the head shaking. They can come back when they're ready to present it. Thank you. Okay, next item is item 7, agreement with MTSU for data analysis. And this actually came out of our opioid committee. Chairman Harris, are you going to do this one for us, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just explain it real quick.
All right.
What it is we have right around $2 million to in our account to give the county funds to help organizations, as well as the county is hiring more caseworkers, more case managers, more police. We had that opportunity, but we got into a situation where it's got a little bit over our head, and we made a deal with MTSU for them to take over all the vetting, take over all the analysis. They would give us what their assessment is on where we should spend the funds, and they would also vet the people who are asking for the funds, and they'll give us a recommendation. This was $200,000. I had met with MTSU. We had got that down to $100,000, and in my opinion, it's probably the best thing that we could do going forward. Make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second before we have any discussion? Any other members have a comment or questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Mr. Gooch? Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. Next item is number 8, Health Department CARES Act Grant Amendment and related general fund budget amendments. And let's see, it's Brian. Welcome. And if you would state your name and position.
Glad to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Cumbie, Director of the Rutherford County Health Department. The item we have before you tonight concerns an amendment to our CARES funding grant. This is a grant specifically targeted at immunization and preparedness improvements at local health departments. It was originally approved by the County Commission February 22 in the amount of $75,000. The state later has decided that Rutherford County Health Department's qualified for several additional renovations, and they have increased the approved funding to the amount of $340,500. This would allow for improvements to our clinics, such as a metal canopy to shelter our nurses while they give immunizations or do testing, additional paving for traffic flow, expanded drug rooms with improved dehumidifiers and HVAC, electronic access card readers for security, and having our phone system tied into the generator, backup generators, so they would always operate. There is no local match needed for this grant. If approved by the county would pay and then invoice the state for repayment. All construction would go through the county procurement process. This evening, we are asking for your approval to amend that $75,000 contract to the $340,500 amount that the state has agreed to reimburse.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions or a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the request and a second. Commissioner Sereno, any further discussion?
Quick question. This goes from April 15, 2022 to June 30, 2024. So that covers this cycle and the next budget cycle, basically. How does that work going between?
I have actually accounted for this in the budget in front of you tonight. And so how that will work is if for some reason we're able to spend some this year, I've budgeted the revenue and the expense next year, so they'll cancel each other out. So we just would come back and amend this next year if we end up spending anything in the next month and a half. But as it stands today, I budgeted the full amount in next budget year with the full expenditures, just to cover in case they're not allowed, in case they can't spend anything in the next month and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Smith.
Any further questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Byron. Next up is a general fund transfer for PAWS.
Good evening, Michael Gregory, Director, Rutherford County PAWS. Just asking to move $10,000 within our budget due to increased utility costs to finish out the budget year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions for Michael? I have a question since no one else does. What line item is this coming out of? This is not coming out of the personnel item.
It is not. It's coming out of line 357, which is our veterinary services line item. That's what we use to pay our contract vets. We didn't have them doing as many surgeries and coming in as often.
So that's separate from the, we had transferred money to you to hire a vet.
Right.
And I just wanted to make sure it wasn't coming out of that line item.
No, sir, it is not. It is not.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all.
All right, next is the ambulance service fund budget transfer.
Good evening. Brian Gaither, Ambulance Service Director. We're asking to move $150,000 from the paraprofessional line items into the part-time personnel line item to cover some of the vacancies that we had that we're having to fill with part-time positions.
Any questions for Mr. Director Gaither?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to
Second.
approve and a second. Commissioner Irving, any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Next is a FEMA Public Assistant Grant. And I'm not sure who's going to cover that for us. Chris.
Chairman, Mayor, Committee. Emergency Management is
Excuse me,
requesting...
this is Mr. Clark, Chris Clark, Public Safety Director.
Sorry.
Clark.
Clark.
Yeah, I think he's a reporter for the Daily, what is that?
Channel 5.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to bail out the EMA director because he just showed up and he didn't hear your announcement at the front end of the committee hearing. So I'm going to bail him out just a little bit. They're having fun with you, Chris, because the chairman said, please announce your name and your position when you come to the podium. So you're getting played with just a little bit.
Sorry about that. I was in the meeting that was next door. Chris Clark, Public Safety Director, Emergency Management. We're requesting to apply for a FEMA Public Assistance Grant in the result of the April 1st tornado. And what this will allow us to do is submit an application for 75% of our credible expenditures to receive back those funds. This is for us, not necessarily the individuals that are affected. That's another grant that we're working through with FEMA. Also, there's a good chance that the state of Tennessee will put in a 12.5% match as well.
Is there any match to this, Chris?
No, it's a reimbursement of 75%.
So we're potentially on the hook for 12.5%?
Correct.
Let me clarify something. We have spent this money to respond to this disaster regardless of whether we get this or not. Once we got the disaster declaration, it allows us to apply for this, to apply for some reimbursement up to 75%. And a lot of times in these scenarios, the state will come in and match half of our portion, which in this case would be 12.5%.
Correct.
So this will be a reimbursement, and if we were to get this, a lot of times it's 1 to 2 years after. And as an example, we just got some money either last month or the month before last for some floods that happened in the Carolina area. That was several years ago, so just to clarify there.
Chris, will this cover, I know it will cover, or at least should help us cover our overtime for our people, but will it also pick up some of the cost of hauling material and the cost associated to that?
Yes, sir, it will. And it's all kind of all inclusive of overtime, debris removal, equipment costs as far as rentals, and even our trucks that have certain hourly rates for them, which is called a FEMA schedule. It's kind of all of inclusive.
Thank you. Any further questions for Director Clark? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve.
Second.
2 seconds. Give this one to Mr. Sereno. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Chris. All right, item 12, NASPO ValuePoint Cooperative Purchasing Agreement for computer equipment, and this is for Cody. He had had an engagement when we told him he didn't have to come, so he could make that. But basically, I think I can explain it. He is asking for permission to join and do purchasing through a cooperative. Now, he's not asking for any money, but the state wants us to approve him being able to use the cooperative. If I didn't explain that well, Michael, you can pick it up. But like I said, there's no money involved here. Basically, there's a cooperative where we could possibly save money on equipment he'd be purchasing, and he's asking for permission to use that cooperative. So, any questions?
So moved.
Have Vice Chairman Johnson, motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Irving, any further discussion?
Is this something we have to do, or is it something that we?
So the way these purchasing cooperative works, it's very similar to purchasing off state contract. So what happens is these purchasing cooperatives come together and bid things as a whole for purchasing and buying power. But our auditors require us to document that y'all allow us to do this instead of purchasing off state contract. And in this case, he's wanting to buy a store. I believe one of the things he's wanting to buy is a very expensive storage array. And it's actually cheaper through this purchasing cooperative than we can find it anywhere else. And so the auditors make us bring these purchasing cooperatives to this body and to the commission to allow us to use those instead of either state contract or bidding it.
So you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 13, General Fund Budget Amendment and transfers for the Sheriff's Department. And Steve, I think you've got several there, and be sure to move that item off 31 up.
Good evening. I'm Steve Spence. I'm the Administrative Deputy Chief at the Sheriff's Office. First Amendment is to allocate funds awarded to the Sheriff's in Rutherford County for mental health patients transport grant. We're wishing to purchase 2 transport vans fully equipped to transport patients utilizing a portion of this funding previously allocated for the other contracted services. This is eligible expense per the mental health transport grant. Requesting to take $152,250 from the grant and place into our motor vehicles line item. Chairman, you do them all at the same time or one at a time?
We have them listed all together on the agenda that way.
Okay.
If that's okay with the committee.
Unless I hear an objection, we'll continue. If one of you want to pull one separate, let me know. Please continue.
Thank you, sir. This amendment is to move money from other salaries and wages and youth services to place in our overtime line item, requesting $150,000 from other salaries and wages, $40,000 from youth services line item, and place $190,000 in our overtime line item. Next amendment is to take funds received from sales of materials and place into our maintenance and repair of vehicles. $8,327 from the sales of materials and place into our repair and maintenance of vehicles. Next amendment is to recognize donations that we received and want to place them into other supplies and materials. It's $200. Next amendment, this amendment is to take money from guards' salaries to place money into the overtime line item and other supplies and materials, requesting $160,000 from the guards' salaries, place $150,000 into the overtime line item, and $10,000 in other supplies and materials.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
That one is going to be under jail. That's
Yes.
the next item. It was the 4 for sheriff or under one item.
Okay.
And then item 31B will go with that one.
Okay. This amendment is to allocate funds awarded to Rutherford County for the ELC Detection and Mitigation of COVID-19 and Confinement Facilities Grant. This is a no-match grant with a period of performance August 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2024. Funds will be used by the Sheriff's Office in the county jail to purchase prisoner clothing, mattresses, clothing sealer, air purifiers, and a full body scanner. The Correction Work Center will use their funds for washer, dryer, and a full body scanner. Requesting to accept the $472,000. $150,728 will be placed in the prisoner's clothing line item. $144,200 will be placed into other equipment. And then the remaining $177,072 placed in the Work Center's other equipment line item.
Okay, you've heard his request. Are there any questions? Chairman Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the second one, the $190,000 of overtime, over what time span was that, and what was the nature of the overtime?
Some of it, we spent $41,000 in the tornado overtime, and it's just covering where we're shorthanded on some of the divisions.
Okay, would that be an example of the FEMA grant reimbursement?
Yes, sir. The county will be reimbursed for that overtime that we spent on the tornado.
Okay. And did you say, someone say it may take 2 years to get the...
It could. I mean, I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying it could, because we just got our final portion of the FEMA money for where we helped with some of the floods in the Carolina. I can't remember if it was North or South Carolina, but we just got that about 2 months ago, and that was several years ago.
Mayor Carr.
Commissioner Gooch, I had the FEMA director in my office. I don't even know what today is, yesterday or the day before, and we talked about this, and we talked about the excellent job with regard to the Rutherford cleanup that we did in the documentation of that effort. His comment to me was, wow, I'm impressed. And he was going to facilitate that. As a matter of fact, I got a meeting with him and Mayor Mitchell, Cannon County Mayor, to facilitate that. So I'm much more hopeful that we're talking just a handful of months as opposed to a couple of years. So FEMA, I've met with FEMA. I'm going to meet with FEMA again. They're aware of it. They're aware of our efforts indirectly in Cannon County and how we're going to get reimbursed with that. So I'm positive.
And I applaud you, Mr. Mayor, for how you reacted to the tornado and the Sheriff's Department, all of our first responders, Chris Clark. But do we have any kind of an idea how much that tornado cost the county government?
We will. We'll have that fairly soon. As a matter of fact, from Bishop Wagner, our solid waste director, I believe they were out there picking up for the last time this week, and we may have one more pickup, and that'll be it. I think Bishop can comment on that when he comes up in a little bit, but we're about 97, 98% there. So that final number will come to us very, very shortly.
Any further questions? Do we have a motion on this? Okay, we do need a motion.
Move to approve all of them.
Commissioner, Chairman Gooch, and second, Commissioner Johnson. Any further questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
We got to vote on the jail. That one was separate on the agenda.
Oh,
Jail one,
okay,
the guards.
on the overtime? Okay, sorry, yep. This amendment is to take money from the guards and salaries to place money into the overtime and other supplies and materials, requesting $160,000 from guard salary and place $150,000 into the overtime and $10,000 in other supplies and materials.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Piercy?
Second.
Motion, second. Commissioner Sereno? Any other questions? Mr. Gooch?
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you. Is the overtime mainly due because we're just not fully staffed?
Yes,
We're
sir.
having to-
Backfill the detention officers they're filling in for.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions? Call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next is the 15 Directional Ad-Vantage Holdings LLC advertising contract for opioid awareness and prevention. I think this is for mall advertising.
Good evening, Chairman P., Mayor Carr, Commissioners. Lisa Kay, Public Information Officer. This request has been approved by Rob on April 12th. It's 26 weeks for $2,112.50. Monthly average visitors will be 440,000. And we have a good location. We're by a sports store.
Y'all have any questions? I have a motion from Chairman Harris. Do I hear a second? And a second. This actually was approved by the Opioid Committee, as she stated, and forwarded to y'all for approval. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, next up is our Director of Schools. Seems like I just saw you a few minutes ago. General Purpose School Fund Budget Amendment. We were actually at Teachers Retirement Awards.
We absolutely were. Thank you for attending. New commissioners, everyone, Jimmy Sullivan, Rutherford County Director of Schools. So the first thing you have before you is a general purpose school budget amendment. This amendment is to fund the purchase of the building and property at 814 South Church Street. This property is listed with Matthews Real Estate Investment Services. This has been negotiated to be acquired in the amount of $1,161,460. This property will be funded amending General Purpose Fund 141 by decreasing 3,900 unassigned fund balance and increasing capital outlay account 7,600,799. Other capital outlay in the amount of $1,161,460. If I may, Chairman, can I go over what we plan to use the facility for?
Please.
So one of the major needs, we realize that as a county school system, we're a huge ask on our funding body, you as commissioners, and so with funding that we already have that is in our fund balance is healthy right now, and so some of those smaller items we're trying to take care of ourselves instead of coming back before you to ask for funding. This is one of those. We are in desperate need of an additional alternative school. This would serve as a third alternative school for us in the county school system.
Any questions for the director? Commissioner?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They are. Yeah.
Are they portables? I mean,
Absolutely, yes. Yes, so Holloway is actually a choice school. They're not considered one of our alternative schools. Daniel McKee and Smyrna West are our two alternative schools. They both have portable classrooms. We would like to have students on about a 60-day program when they're really expelled for a full year, remanded for a full year, but we do a 60-day program. In reality, they're leaving now in 45 days, which is better than the 20 or 25 we were holding them last year, but we just need extra seats.
Mr. Chairman, we heard this in Health and Education, and my recollection is that it's a 3-story building, and this will be our 3rd alternative school, and there would also be some rooms for special education,
Correct.
Things like that. And my motion is to accept this, to approve it.
Okay, I have a motion to accept it, and I'll throw in that this is within their budget.
Second.
And a second. Any further questions, Commissioner Irvin?
Who owns this? Who will own it?
Rutherford County Government, I believe. Is that how it's titled?
The county, it'll be titled to the Rutherford County, not the school board.
Okay, and is there this is a more general question, is there a list of all the properties that the schools use generally?
Sure, we can get one. It is ultimately just our school buildings and our central office. I don't think we have anything outside of that, but I'm sure, I don't know who would be the person with the county to get that.
We do have it in our inventory department. I don't know that we have a specific list of schools versus county, but we do have an inventory list of all the schools, their central office. They have an annex at the central office, but off the top of my head, I don't know that they have anything separate.
Don't. If we do, I'd love to find out about it. So
And all of the newer school buildings, to answer your question, will, in future purchases, this body had passed, I believe it was Chairman Phillips who talked about this in Health and Ed. This body previously passed that any property purchased in the future, and this was several years ago, would go into the county's name. So as it stands, we only have some really old school buildings that are still currently in the school department's name.
Are there going to be renovations, additions, stuff like that needed, and where does that money come from?
Yeah, we will take that out of fund balance as well, because it's a healthy fund balance. We won't want to ask the county commission to fund that. We are estimating still, so we're purchasing this for under $100 a square foot, and so even with renovations, we are still estimating that, I believe at about $700,000 or $800,000 in my last estimate, so getting closer to $2 million total. It may need a new HVAC unit, so you may hit 2.5 at the very largest. You're still under $200 a square foot, which is nowhere near what we could build a facility for.
And do y'all come back to this group, to this committee?
Yep,
okay.
we will.
Thank you.
And I don't envision that being a very quick timeline, so there are tenants there still. Since we had the last meeting with Health and Ed, we were hoping to be in by September 1st. The more realistic was to be in by January 1st. I'm hearing, based with our school board attorney, that tenants were trying to do December 31st as their end drop dead date of when they all have to be out, so that's going to slow us down a little bit.
Any further questions for the director?
Do you have the renovation funds in your budget?
Yes, sir, we'll have that in
Excess.
it'll be in fund balance that we have.
Further comments? Hearing none, call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Peake?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next item, please.
All right, next item, I'm actually going to turn this over to County Finance Director Michael Smith, because this was kind of cleaning some numbers up.
So this cleans up it's a project, cleaned up project amendment for this. This was passed at the Health and Education Committee. And then we're requesting, this would take Laverne and Blackman off of the project list. And the reason I'm requesting that is because this body last year approved the design of 5 high schools. And based on that, the school board and this commission has chosen to design 3 and spent the money on 3, as made that final decision last month. So as of right now, there has not been any money spent on Laverne or Blackman. So we would like to clean that list up and take that off the project list. And I need this Health and Ed and this body's approval to do that.
You've basically got a cleanup motion here
correct.
for county purposes. Any further questions for Michael? Commissioner Irvin?
Is there a motion already? Is there already a motion? Motion to approve.
There is not. Okay, thank you. I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? And a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Serrano?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next item, please.
All right, thank you. Next is Fund 189 Building Program Request. We've talked over the last couple months about the Beatty property. So this request is to purchase the Beatty property, which is in two separate appraisals, one for 59.1 acres at $4.5 million, and the second for the house and 2.29 acres at $730,000. Total for 61.39 acres is $5.23 million. The funding for this property comes from Fund 189 Building Projects 99100-715 land account.
Any questions for the director? Michael?
Sorry, I need to piggyback here because this is going to coincide with also the building projects report. To do this, we had a couple other project amendments that Health and Ed passed, and I just want to point those out for the minutes. We used to fund the land purchase. We moved money left over from Plainview Elementary, and then to this, I'm going to go ahead and cover the next part of this. For the design of the school going on there, the schools are requesting to use their own money, not a future bond issue for this. So that does save us some sharing money. So there's some money left over from a previous Roy Waldron addition, some money left over there that we're moving to help fund the design of a new elementary school as well. So I just want to clarify that on the projects list.
This is actually saving us money because we're not having to use unshared money that we would have to split with the city of Murfreesboro. We're able to take this from our line items that have already been shared. Any other questions on this?
Yeah, I have a kind of general question that kind of keeps coming up. Kind of in that proximity, and you can help me kind of sort this out. This is what I'm hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, in that proximity, there's, I think, 4 county elementaries, some with capacity, some that don't have capacity. And then there's 3 Murfreesboro elementaries and 1 Murfreesboro elementary planned. And there's a charter school. And a couple questions. One, how does this fit into that? Okay. And more specifically, what are the plans for Blackman's 13 acres and this Beatty property?
Yeah. So first question, where this fits in, our most overcrowded schools right now for elementary are Blackman Elementary and and Stewart's Creek Elementary School. And so this would be immediate relief for those 2 schools. You also do, you're correct, you have Browns Chapel Elementary there as well. The only one that has any type of open seats in that area that's a county school would be Stewartsboro. Stewartsboro has probably 3 classrooms that we could use, but they're a growing school as well. So that's kind of how it fits in master plan as far as it's needed to relieve that overcrowding. The Blackman Elementary School additional land, our school board looked at additions versus a new campus, and our school board ultimately voted on going with an additional campus instead of an addition to that building.
Did y'all look at like the non-traditional, putting 5th and 6th on the 13 acres or?
Yes, but again, at some point, our job is to educate our kids, and we felt like it was more beneficial for them to be educated in the same exact setting that we have across the rest of the county.
Okay, then the overall plan for Beatty, can you kind of outline that?
Yeah, so right now the Beatty property is first and foremost an elementary school. So that would be the first ask that we would have. The second ask is we would either have a middle school or as you talked about, a 6-12 structure, somewhat different of a structure than we currently have. We're always trying to look to what's the best way we can do things across the county. I'm not sure that my school board is totally sold on doing something different, of doing a junior high and a traditional high school in the same building, but there's not enough land there for just an elementary and a comprehensive high school. So it would either need to be an elementary and a traditional middle school, or an elementary and a combined junior/senior high school.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. And I might point out, this has already been approved by the full commission. Am I not correct, Michael? Not the direct funding, but the building itself for the plans.
I don't think this one has. Now, the funding itself has already been, so we already had, I think what you're referring to is we have, let me read this for the record. We already have $3,325,000 set aside for land that has already been approved by the full commission. Because this parcel was a little bigger and it cost a little more money because of the area of town it was in, they needed to amend, which is why they're here to amend, moving money from Plainview Elementary to help, to help fund this project. But you are correct, there was already 3.3 approved by the commission, but that they needed to move a little bit more.
All right, thank you. Any other questions,
And so
Commissioner Irving?
this is the land portion. The school itself is, which fiscal year are we talking about?
Next fiscal year. Is that correct, Michael, on kind of what we've talked about?
Yeah, so the amendment he has before you is to move the money for a land purchase today, like in the next month, next 30 days. And then also part of this, item B to this, is to help fund the design of a school to go on this property. And this amendment would take care of that as well. But that money has already been approved by the commission. There's already been money set aside for a future elementary school. And we are moving $90,000 of leftover Roy Waldron money to go towards the design of a future elementary school as part of this. I think that's his item B. That school, the school board has told us they anticipate bringing something to Health and Ed and to this body next fall to actually build the school. That has been my understanding.
Be the fall at the earliest. If this is approved, the purchase will go to the full commission next Thursday. We would then start our architectural design fee and then look for bid November, December at the earliest.
Do we use the same design?
We are for this.
For this?
Yes. So that is something that
I'm
gets,
very open to alternatives. I'm just trying to
Yes.
think through.
Yes,
It's going to be the same.
So you want me to go ahead and do both motions together? That's how it's
We have
presented
them
on
listed
there.
that way.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to the second motion if you don't mind, or did we already?
Well,
have the first
we've
on the floor, didn't
we've
we?
already got a motion on this first one.
Who was the second? Can I clarify who the second was on that?
Sereno.
Sereno, okay.
Let's go ahead and is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When we bought the Plainview property out there and we kind of got a little spanked on that, we made a suggestion that they have discussions with Road Commissioner Brooks and one or two others to make sure we didn't get spanked on a future buy of property like that. Has that been accomplished?
It has. We are also having lots of conversations with the city as well, because the city, one of their streets backs up very close to that. So they have a city council agreement at their last city council meeting for sewer access for this too, that involve roads and all other types of things.
So you see no problem with road access or having to buy easements to widen the road and all
Not
that?
with what we have right now. No, sir.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Motion carries. Okay, you've got another one there.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And Commissioner Irvin, to answer that question, so yes, this next portion, what I'm about to read, is involving architecture fees. So we are requesting to use the exact same design. That saves us about $1 million using the exact same design. Despite what gets mentioned, sometimes we aren't building the Taj Mahals. We don't have columns in our buildings. That would be our sister school system that is building those with part of the funding that we probably send them. But that is not what we're doing. We're using the same design that we would be using at Stewart's Creek Elementary School that was opened in 2006, I believe. So it's the same design. I also want to give our team some credit because they got the architecture design fee down to 3%. And so we saved quite a bit over the last couple weeks in working towards this. And then I'll read our motion. So we're requesting to approve funding for architectural design services for the Beatty property. This request will be based on the anticipated construction cost in the 5-year plan, and the firm design fees will be presented to the board. Request is not to exceed $900,000 for phase 1 design only, and that is because that is what we have available instead of going and asking this to be included as part of the bond, which is normally what we do when we request a school. We have $900,000 already available, so we're requesting to go ahead and use that money instead of asking the county for it.
What's the total design fee? Because that's not the 3.
The 3% of our total, it's going to be closer to about 1.6 or 1.7.
When I first became a commissioner, that design fee or architect fee was 5%. So Commissioner Gooch, I know you remember that. We had a lawsuit over it, as a matter of fact. But anyway, we've learned to play nicer, and we've also got some better rates. So, any further questions for the director? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Chairman Harris.
Second.
And a second from Chairman Gooch. Any further discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Serrano? Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, I know you've got at least one other thing.
Yeah, one last one. All right, so last one is for a Fund 177 budget amendment. We had a failure of a light pole at our Smyrna High School football field. So engineering received pricing to replace poles and lights at Smyrna High School, $310,000, and Laverne High School, $320,000, due to the continued deterioration of the poles at both locations. We request to utilize Sourcewell purchase plan and award the contracts to Musco Lighting. Request not to exceed $650,000, utilizing ending fund balance of Fund 177. We're requesting this right now because materials are 10 to 12 weeks out, and we're trying to get ready for the fall.
And this is money within your budget.
It's in 177's fund balance.
Any questions from the committee? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I so move.
Reno moves.
Second.
Chairman Harris seconds. Any further discussion or questions for the director? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Piercy?
Yes.
Point of order, Mr. Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy? Commissioner Serrano?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. I think we all were in affirmative on that. I'm looking down the line there because I didn't hear the voice on a couple of them. I don't see anybody shaking their head. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. And I'll be here afterwards. I know you guys have a budget presentation overview. I'll be here afterwards. I want to thank Michael and his staff because we've done some really good things in collaboration. I think that is going to show the partnership with the County Commission. So thank you, Michael, for all your work.
Okay, item 20, fire fee schedule changes.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Josh Sanders of the Rutherford County Fire Marshal. Before you, you will see a proposed change to the current fire permit fee schedule. This was a little backstory. This was done in conjunction with some of the planning department and codes department personnel to kind of come up with a updated fee schedule as it relates specifically on our end to construction permits. The Fire Marshal's Office issues both construction permits and operational permits. Construction permits deal with the installation, modification, or removal of fire protection systems, specifically, whether that be fire sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, things like hood systems, fire pumps, whatnot. These construction permits are the permit changes before you are focused on construction permits only, with the exception of one operational permit, which is a commercial open burning permit, which deals with specifically with land clearing for development purposes. Other operational permits were not considered in this fee schedule increase, as we wanted to maintain the current fee schedule, is not to negatively impact business owners and things of that nature. You will see before you the type of required permit that we currently have under the construction category and the one operational permit at the bottom. The current fee schedule, which is exclusively a flat rate schedule as it stands, and then two options, proposed options next to that. The first proposed change for option number one, looks at square footage based fee increase, as you'll see there. We did leave some of the fire extinguishing systems, fire pumps as flat rates. The fire extinguishing system tends to be a smaller installation and doesn't tend to increase in size as with the building footprint as the fire sprinklers and fire alarms do. And the fire pumps typically go hand in hand with our sprinkler system. So we did do a flat rate increase on that category. Option number two looks at specific size parameters for the different systems. So for example, as you'll see with the fire sprinkler permits, we're looking at an allotment of heads per increase in fees. So as you'll see, a 300 base fee up to 50 heads, and that increases as the size of the system increases, requiring larger number of heads. Same with the fire alarms, except we're looking at a number of devices on the system. Retrospectively, as I've analyzed the previous year's permits, we come to a relatively close figure depending on the options. Option 2 tends to come up with a little higher figure permit-wise of like examples that we've used over the course of the past year. Just as an example, in over the past year, option 1. Let me back up. The total previous year for fire construction permits was $2,125. $2,125 collected in fire construction permits. If we option 1 using the exact same types of projects, obviously this is just looking retrospectively. We can't necessarily predict what kinds of projects and the sizes that will come in future years. However, just looking at the exact same projects that we've taken over the last year, option 1 would have generated approximately $6,414.15. Option 2 would have generated $7,100 of permit fees. And just for your information, operational permits over the past year generated just under $2,000. That being said, I'm happy to expound upon any of that information, answer any questions you may have regarding the permit program or these proposed fee schedule changes.
This is something we've looked at Public Works. Commissioner Piercy and myself have heard at least parts of these or more, and also our planning department. I know Chairman Reed, Chairman Phillips have heard these, but this is an attempt at us to help offset having to increase property taxes for our folks and to pay actual cost. This does not come close to paying what it actually cost us to do this. I know I used to do fire alarm tests myself, and some of those can be drawn out. Any questions for Mr. Sanders? If not, I
have a few questions. The 2125-64-1, are those annual numbers?
No, sir. That is a look back on our past year of the fire construction category only.
Okay, and these are all annual, or I mean, these are all one-time.
So the construction category would be a one-time permit. So, for example, we're building a new commercial building. These would be all commercial projects. The permits that you're looking at. So these are all commercial projects, not dealing with the exception of if a residential development requires fire sprinklers, then they would require a fire sprinkler permit in that residence. But that being said, we're looking largely at commercial projects, if not almost entirely over the past year. That $2,125 figure was the construction permits collected over the past year's time, if that makes sense.
Okay, so a couple questions come to mind. The analysis that was used to come up with these numbers, and of course, Chairman P piqued my interest. What would it really cost to match the cost that it would be required to provide this service or these permits?
Well, at Kittrell, it's $1.7 million a year just for manpower, so.
So from a fire permitting standpoint, we're at, I'll use for lack of a term, somewhat of a disadvantage permit revenue from a permit revenue standpoint, just because we're typically, because it's almost entirely of a commercial nature, and while commercial projects have increased significantly over the last couple years, we're still not seeing, say, the same number of permits being pulled that, say, building codes would when you look at the totality of what they're looking at from their permitting program. So we have a relatively limited number of permits collected. Last year we did under 50 permits. Okay, so looking at that, obviously we want to evaluate constantly our permitting program and the revenue we're collecting with the ultimate hope and intent that we are offsetting as much cost as possible as it takes to run, at least if for nothing else, the Fire Marshal's Division. With that, in order to actually match the expense, if you will, man hours and things like that, for the limited number of permits, the actual cost per permit would be quite large.
I'm just talking about the permitting process, not to fund the whole Kittrell.
You asked the wrong question, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking about the permitting process.
Yes, so I would have to defer to Director Bell or Director DeMosi on exactly what, with the system that we're using to collect permits and process that, they could speak to that. Our system ties into theirs that is established, and I do not have any figures on what that process costs to actually process the permits through CityWorks, the system that we use. I can certainly defer to them on that cost, but
We'll be looking at that in another
That's
item
fine.
coming up. I just wanted to clarify, we're not looking at the entire cost. We're looking just the permitting cost.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. A motion to approve?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion?
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, are we approving one of the options? Or what came out of Public Works, or was there a recommendation?
There wasn't, well, they were grouped together in Public Works, so the recommendation, Piercy, you may step in and clarify it, but I thought they were grouped together, but we went to the higher recommendation.
We didn't separate fire permitting from the rest of it. It was all in one package.
Right, that's why I'm saying, I'm seeing it this way for the first time, but we went to the higher option on the fee that we were looked at, and they were grouped together at that time. So yes, we've looked at option 2.
Okay, so the motion is to approve option 2.
Well, I'll go back to the motion. Is that your motion, Commissioner Piercy? It is. Commissioner Chanto, is that your second? Okay, to approve option 2. Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it went through Public Safety, not through Public Works. And if I'm not mistaken, Public Safety recommended option 2.
Thank you for that clarification. We did see it too. It was mentioned, but it was grouped together when we saw it at Public Works.
But it was presented at Public Safety, and Public Safety, if I'm not mistaken, voted to recommend and forward to this committee option number 2.
I see Chairman Reed back there. Is that correct? Yes. He's saying yes, you've got a good recall. Any other questions on this? We were voting to approve option 2, proposed fee changes for the Fire Marshal's office. Hearing no other discussion, call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Serrano?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Our next item is the juvenile detention contract with Latham Corrections Consulting.
Good evening. I'm Lynn Duke, the Director of the Juvenile Detention Center. The first thing I have tonight is contract for a PREA audit, which is a Prison Rape Elimination Act. It is a federal law. We are required to participate in these audits every 3 years. This is the firm that we used the last time that we did this audit. His fee includes all of his expenses. It's $5,500, and that is a very competitive fee, and I will answer any questions that you have.
Since it's every 3 years, do you put this into your budget request the third year coming?
I do.
So is this money in your budget now?
It currently is, yes.
What is he auditing? I'm just trying to get a sense for.
It's the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's a federal law. We're required to, as all correctional facilities are, to maintain a certain standard regarding reporting of sexual assaults and making sure that we're abiding by this particular federal law, and the audit is set up to make sure that we're doing such.
I'm just curious, if it's in your budget, why are we needing to?
The audit is scheduled for 2023, so it's in the budget that's going to be hopefully approved in a couple of weeks. So I have it in my budget, but because it's contract, it's just something that we've always brought through committee.
Okay, and do we know when the audit is?
If this passes all the way through, we are scheduled to have him on site August 10th and 11th, but he knows that that may change based on how the committees vote.
Any further questions for Ms. Duke? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chairman Gooch. I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Second. Keep in mind, this is a requirement, unfortunately. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Serrano?
Yes.
Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, Lynn.
The next thing that we have are two separate MOUs between Rutherford County by and through the Juvenile Detention Center and the Rutherford County Board of Education. These MOUs have gone through committee before. However, the language has changed. It has been reviewed and approved now by the Rutherford County Attorney, Nick Christensen, and also the Rutherford County Board of Education Attorney. There were a few issues regarding the language as it pertains to insurance, and they are comfortable now with the way that it reads, and that any of the issues that there may have been with prior language is now as it should be.
He has a second item, Michael. Can we take those together?
Yes, I have them listed together.
Okay, please continue with your second one, unless I hear an objection from the committee.
I think that's all I have.
Did you cover both agreements in there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we have them together. That's the
Okay, thank you. Sitting here reading my notes. Any questions for Ms. Duke? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion for the contract with the Rutherford County Board of Education.
Is this just basically a housekeeping measure?
Yes, the Board of Education and Juvenile Detention have a great working relationship as far as how we educate the young people that are in detention and their educational needs. This originated in the Juvenile Detention Center Board, where they were debating the language of that insurance portion. And as I said, county attorney and BOE attorney got together, made some adjustments, and this is the final product.
This is nothing new, correct?
That's correct.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sereno seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Okay, item 23, Domestic Violence Stop Grant. I'm not sure who's going to cover that one for us.
So this grant we get every 3 years, and so this will be, for this grant will start on July 1 of 2023 for next budget year. There is a 25% match to this grant. Should I pull up read the dollar amount for you correctly? So it's a $212,742 grant with a 25% match. This will be for years FY24, FY25, and FY26. We currently, like I said, do have this and have had this the last 3 years. And we have the current 25% match budgeted currently this year, and it is included in your packet for next year. However, that is subject to this vote.
You did say a 75-25.
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Got 2 seconds. Commissioner, Chairman Gooch, I believe you slid in there first for the second. Any other discussion or questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes, motion carries. Item 24, General Fund Budget Amendment for County Buildings. Going to do that one too.
Yep. So this is, if y'all remember back, I think it was 2 months ago, it might have been 3, we brought a budget amendment for the Civic Plaza and parking garage for some overage costs there that we were unforeseen. I believe there was a sprinkler project. We have gotten our final bill for that, and I told y'all at the time we'd bring a final budget amendment, and that's what this budget amendment covers. So this budget amendment would be for an additional $62,000 for those projects. I do also want to point out that I have reached out to the city. Me and the mayor also met with the city manager and the city budget director. They have given me an estimate next year, which is included in your notebooks for tonight so that we don't have this problem again next year. And so they have reached out to us with their projects for next year. So I just wanted to point that out. But this would be for the rest. This would take us through the end of the year.
And this is basically a bill that we've accrued.
Correct. This is, we split it, for example, on the Civic Plaza and Parking Garage, we split it 31, our portion is 31.5% of the cost. But this year they were so much more due to a sprinkler system and some other construction improvements in the parking garage, and they replaced some railings on Civic Plaza up there. If you've been over there, there's a new railing around the fountain, and there's some on the edges of the Civic Plaza.
Okay, you've heard the motion, or rather the request. Are there any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion. Thank you, Commissioner Irving. Let's get a
Motion to
second
approve.
first, please. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And a second. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just made a motion to approve, that's it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Next is a general fund amendment for general sessions.
So I'll cover this one again. So this says for general sessions, but what this is where general sessions judges can order a mental evaluation. And they do that for both misdemeanors and for felonies. However, we are responsible for the cost of that mental evaluation for misdemeanors. And we budget for that every year, kind of based on historical of the amount of evaluations they've ordered the previous few years. This year, we have had several long mental evaluation holds. That is a set contract amount that is approved by the state. However, there have been more mental evaluation holds than was budgeted. So this covers that additional cost that we've received so far. And this would be for $12,650 increase.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Commissioner Irving, any further discussion? Call roll.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Item 26, State Drug Court and Veterans Treatment Court Grant Amendment and related general fund budget amendments. Welcome.
Lachelle Ricks, the Director of the Recovery Courts. I received a call last week, Thursday, saying that the state had some additional funding they wanted to offer us. We had a short time to accept it and use it. It's $15,000 for our drug court and $10,000 for our veterans court, and we are requesting permission to accept those funds and spend them before the end of this current fiscal year.
Are there any matching funds required on that?
There is no match.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions?
What exactly is it for?
For our drug court and veterans court, so we can use it for a number of items. We're trying to do some furniture, some curriculum, some supplies, just things that we can build up for the next year because we may not get those funds again.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have a general fund budget transfer for the state evidence-based jail program grant.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Davis, the Reentry Program Coordinator with the Recovery Courts. This request is to move $8,200 from line item 709 to line item 711. This will allow us to purchase furniture and supplies for the Adult Detention Center for this grant. And we have extra funds left over due to the infrastructure costs coming in less than we budgeted for.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? Call roll, please.
Mr. Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the planning and engineering and building code fee changes. Mr. Irvin, we promised you we would be bringing that up, and here they come. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, everybody else. I'm Doug DeMasi, Planning Director. Also up here is Mike Hughes, our County Engineer, and Tanya Bell, our Building Codes Director. Any of us will be happy to answer any questions about these fee changes that we're proposing. What you have on your iPads tonight is really the culmination of several meetings that we've had amongst staff, with the mayor's office, also with the Planning Commission, and also Public Works Committee earlier this week. What I've got on the first couple pages there, you'll see our current and proposed fees. This is for the fees that we charge in the Planning and Engineering Department. I'll let Ms. Bell handle the building codes, as she's far more knowledgeable about that than I am. You'll see the current fee structure that we have and the proposed. When we first presented this to Planning Commission, the proposed fees that you're seeing on this presentation were different. There was additional discussion on this during the Public Works Committee earlier this week, and some higher fees were recommended for several of the categories. Those categories, and I can go into as much or as little detail as you want with this, so just I'll take my guidance from the committee. But you'll see that the preliminary plans, final plat for major subdivisions, those went up. Basically, the base fee was doubled and went up to from $100 to $750 per lot. The site plans and minor finals, although they are changed from our current fees, those did not change from the Planning Commission's meeting we had last month. You'll see our waivers has increased. Our site plan approvals, reapprovals for site plan and plats have also, we don't charge anything for that now. Sometimes plats or site plans do expire after a certain amount of time. Right now we don't charge for any reapproval fees. We would start charging the base fee for those. You can see some other fees that we don't currently charge for our address assignments. That's something else that we would start charging for. Our rezoning fees have gone up as well. Another new fee, well, before I get into that, our zoning compliance fees, you'll notice, have been $50, and that's the beginning of the building permit process. If somebody wants to build a house or put like a garage, pool, something like that on their property, they do start in our office. We check it out to make sure it meets zoning and engineering requirements. It's been $50 since 2007. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into these, so we're proposing to change that to $250 for all new principal residential dwellings, accessory dwelling units, which are what ADUs are, and any additions, basically living space, and then $150 for any detached accessory structure like a garage, shed, or pool. You'll also notice that our proposals for our variances and special exceptions for our Board of Zoning Appeals we're proposing to increase, and our rezoning fees for non-planned developments we are planning to raise to $1,000. We're keeping the base fee for planned developments at $1,000, but we are adding in some additional fees based on the number of residential lots or the square foot fee, per square foot fee for any non-residential area. I'm going to let Mike discuss the construction plan review and land disturbance fees, and then Director Bell will take care of the building codes items.
Mr. Irvin.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Are we being asked to approve these tonight?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
We're asking to, they're asking for approval, and then this would be forwarded to the full commission for approval, but this would not, if I'm going back to Public Works meeting, which I'm on, and also Commissioner Piercy, this would not actually be implemented until first of our fiscal year, which is July 1st, I believe is correct. So yes, the numbers that we're looking at are something that we would like to see, or at least came from a full vote from Public Works in favor of this. Actually, the amended amount, which was the higher amount, which you'll see here in a minute. And if I'm not mistaken, that's already been through planning, and there was another group that's seen this. But anyway, I know there are 5 commissioners sitting in here right now that I'm looking at that have seen this proposal. So anyway, please continue.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman P. Mayor Carr. Commissioners, Mike Hughes, Rutherford County Engineer. What we're talking about, in addition to what Doug had already mentioned, is construction-related fees. About a year and a half ago, we instituted construction plans review fees that we had never collected before. We initiated a system to collect these fees, and it was approved, and we've been happy with that, but we wanted to the mayor's task to bring our budget to cover our own budget instead of being covered by the taxpayers. So what we're doing is looking at increasing a lot of our fees that we've historically covered, but also some of the relatively new fees. Some of the two new fees that we've just, a year and a half we've started collecting our construction plan review fee, which I mentioned. Land disturbance fees, we have collected those, but those historically have only been about $85 per lot. We would like to up the construction plan review fees to about $600 per lot, and this is the nuts and bolts of how you're going to build the subdivision, how you're going to build the roads, the drainage system, the ditch network, the stormwater network. So we're going to start charging a flat fee of $600 per residential lot. Land disturbance, also $600 for residential lots, but in the case of a commercial fee, commercial site plan, it would be a $1,000 base fee plus $250 per acre for the land disturbance permit. And going back to the first page on the site plan, that is kind of like the construction plans for a commercial site. So that's part of the reason you're seeing an increase from 2 cents a square foot to 10 cents a square foot, where we folded our construction plan review fee that was historically separate into this fee, and we've also incorporated the fire marshal review, and that's where that came up at the Planning and Public Works. We bring the fire marshal, we bring the building codes director into our pre-submittal meetings and our plans review meetings, so they're looking at the site plans for life safety issues. Can a fire truck get through the site and make sure it's safe? Will it need to be sprinkled? Anything like that. So those are site plans specific that are not part of his new fire permit fees. So there's a little bit confusion there, but that's what that fee was kind of bumped up to help cover that. And then we are going to institute, going back to the second page on construction-related plans, we're going to institute 2 new fees. One is a construction inspection fee, and this is where we have to send inspectors out in the field and make sure they're building it correctly. So they're out there several times during the construction process at critical points when they're proof rolling the streets, when they're putting down stone, when they're installing the storm network. So those have never been collected before, so we're going to start collecting these now. And then another one is the as-built record drawings and lot release. So we have a requirement that the developer resurvey the storm network, the roads, and they'll submit those to us and make sure that it's built according to plan. So this is part of that review process that we're having to review those plan sets to make sure everything's correct. And then once everything's finished, we can release lots to the building codes department so they can issue building permits. And then the final item on that list for construction-related issues is the critical lot grading plans. This is for an individual lot. A lot of times we'll see a lot in a subdivision that's never been built on. It might have some terrain issues. It might have sinkholes. It might flood. It might have really steep slopes. So this is an individual grading plan for a residential lot that we need to see a little more carefully, and then just hand that off to the builder and say, okay, go ahead. But so we'll review those. We've gone from 150 to 250 on that. And that's our construction related parts. And another one thing I wanted to expound on what Doug had mentioned about the zoning compliance. And this is an initial review for a house or anything, an addition. When Previously, we did not. It was essentially, we checked setbacks and whatnot, but now we're giving a full engineering review. Does this property flood? And these are tracts of land out in the county, not in a typical subdivision. So it might be on a 5-acre tract of land, somebody wants to build a house, a barn, or whatever. So we'll look at the topography. Is it in a flood zone? It is in a sinkhole zone. So we give it a thorough review. And that's why we're bumping that up from $50 to $250. I know that's a lot of information, but I'll try to answer any questions if you have.
Have you done any modeling, what would be like an average house?
Yes.
The fees under current fees and then under proposed fees?
Yes. So the modeling for like a typical house, during Planning and Public Works Subcommittee, we looked at all these fees, but we also incorporated the building codes fees, and we looked at schools facilities tax and other, so what would it cost somebody to divvy up a piece of land and then eventually build a house on it? So we looked at those, and about $7,500 is what we're going to be trying to ask for.
Is that the current or the proposed?
That's proposed, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I
You recognize Chairman
if I could
Phillips.
follow up on Wayne, what Wayne is, I think, asking, or what I heard, is that part of the recommendation is dealing with what contiguous counties or counties that touch Rutherford County are doing. Williamson County, as an example, is sky high. Somewhere, if it depends on how you look at it, but somewhere exceeds $15,000 a lot. We decided through planning that we'd look at a contiguous county such as Wilson County to see what they were doing. Our cost per lot is somewhere around $4,000 at this particular time. With this new proposal, it would take it up to $7,505 for a 50-house lot, And Wilson County currently is charging $7,564. So it would take Rutherford County up to what, in essence, equal to or comparable to what Wilson County is doing. We didn't look at Davidson County, we didn't look at Williamson County, we didn't look at some of those larger counties. We wanted to make sure that we were in touch with a county that had a similar staff to what our planning staff has, and also a similar growth percentage as to what Rutherford County has. Their percentage of growth is almost identical to ours. However, we're much larger than they are, so our percentage when it comes to people is more people. But what we decided through planning was to look at Wilson County and compare ourselves more to that. So on a 50-house subdivision, Wilson County is currently at over $7,500. With incorporating this fee structure would take Rutherford County to $7,500 as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Has there been any modeling or analysis done on the impact on, for example, remodeling is covered and things along those lines? Because that's a component here, and I wouldn't want to unduly.
I think Tanya's got a lot, but one of the things that the Planning Commission and also Public Works was really interested in is that we really want to address construction. So this is addressing construction more than remodeling. So remodeling would have an effect, but it would be a very minor effect. Is that not right, Tanya?
Yes, I can get into that here in just a second. My name is Tanya Bale, and I am the Building Codes Director for Rutherford County. And I, along with Doug and Mike, at the tasking of the mayor, has been working on this for the last couple of months, doing some research on some fees, our fees, and specifically what you just mentioned. I researched about 11 different jurisdictions, adjoining jurisdictions to Rutherford County, I took an average home. Currently, the last couple of years, our average home in Rutherford County has been teetering around 2,500 square feet, 2,400 to 2,600 square feet. So I took a 2,500 square foot home with a 500 square foot garage and 200 in decks and porches. And I researched 11 different jurisdictions within Middle Tennessee to see what their building permit would cost for the exact same house. Of the 11, Rutherford County was the second lowest permit fee. I also researched what the average 2,500 square, those same characteristics, those same criteria, 2,500 square foot single-family dwelling with a garage and porches, what those are selling for, what the average sales price of that type home is in Rutherford County right now. It is, the average cost of a 2,500 square foot home was worked out to be about $522,000. Our permit fees were equating the valuation of the home that we were permitting at $308,000. So as you probably may or may not be aware, our building permit fees, most everybody's permit fees are based on either the valuation of the home or the square footage of the home, and then total valuation based on the square footage. So all of that to say, I took the new construction permitting and I increased it to meet the equivalent of Wilson County, who happened to be the second highest of the 11 that I looked at. So in doing that, our fees would go up to 70 cents a square foot, flat rate fee for 70 cents a square foot for everything under roof, new construction. You were asking there about remodeling and
What percentage would that be, roughly?
Percentage to what?
Standard house, remodeling, permitting, increase to what? Do we have any kind of modeling on that?
So how much of a percentage increase would that be, or?
How much are we raising the fees generally?
So our permit fee was $1,087 for this home. With these new fees, the permit fee would be $2,240. $2,240.
Commissioner Irvin, if I'm not mistaken, our current fee is 35 cents a square foot, and
equates to 35 cents a square foot.
This
yes.
would take it to 70 cents a
70
square
cents,
foot.
so essentially double.
And once again, that's for new construction.
New construction only. Yes, that's only new construction. So building codes permits, as you just mentioned, remodels, additions, accessory structures, swimming pools, storage buildings, all of those projects would affect an existing citizen. So a citizen already lives in this home that they're going to remodel, or they're going to put an addition on, or they're going to add an accessory structure. Those fees we did not increase to the same extent. The last time we increased our fees was in 2016. So I took my budget in 2016, and I took my budget today, and I compared what the expenses were, and that's how I came up with the increase for the rest of the fees, and it was about 29%. And then can I add one more thing? At the very end of there's a 3-page document on your iPads. On the very last page is the commercial building permits. So commercial building permits in Rutherford County, as you know, we don't do a whole lot of commercial activity. There isn't a whole lot of commercial activity in Rutherford County. But when I got to looking at the types of projects that we do in Rutherford County, and the cost of our permit versus that same type of structure inside the city limits of Murfreesboro or inside the town of Smyrna, we were extremely low. So I propose that we update our current fee schedules, ICC fee schedules, to the current today ICC fee schedules. They haven't been, one of them was updated in 2020. The other one I don't think has ever been updated. So, and I know you're probably going to ask what difference that makes to a commercial project. And because all the commercial projects are so different, our permits are based on not only the use of the commercial structure, but also how it's built, the classification, the type of structure. So if it's a steel structure versus a stick-built structure versus a prefab structure, they're all priced differently. So it's hard to estimate what the difference would be without having a specific structure in mind. I will say that the public safety building that we built in Walter Hill also needed to be permitted through the city of Murfreesboro because we were hooked into city sewer. So we didn't permit it because it was a county building and we didn't take funds from one hand and put it in another. But had we permitted that building, it would have been $3,810. And the city of Murfreesboro charged us $27,000 for their building permit. That's what the difference in our commercial permits looks like. Yes. So the public safety building in Rockvale, I said Walter Hill, Rockvale, the one that's finished, is connecting to city sewer. Therefore, the city requires us to pull a permit for that building because we're connecting to city sewer. We don't issue a building permit because it's a county-owned building, but the permit cost, had we permitted it, the permit cost would have been $3,810. And the city building permit cost us $27,000 for that same building.
Any idea what kind of revenue, overall revenue we're talking about under this current versus proposed?
So commercial, we wouldn't have any way to track that because our commercial projects that we get in are so completely different from one year to the next. It might be one church and a couple of office buildings and a dollar store, and then next year it might be 4 churches and one dollar store and a storage building. So, but as far as residential is concerned, the permits, residential permits, this would increase our revenue if the numbers stayed similar to what they have been this last 2 years. It would increase our revenue for building permits by about $1.1 million.
Any other questions for?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for keep
Go ahead.
making all these comments.
Well, you are one of the 5 that has seen this, and so I'm glad you're speaking up.
Permit increases were something that the planning department was asked to do. This isn't coming from them, but it's coming from the mayor's office and from our planning department as it relates to the planning chairman and this chairman of the commission. We asked the planning department to put together some figures so that we could see what they look like. As they were putting together those figures, what we learned, and it was a kind of a surprise, is that our planning department creates fees, of course, but their department was running at a deficit. So the taxpayer is supplementing the cost of running our planning department. Find that in any other county that we surveyed. So there need to be at least a minimum recommendation coming out of planning, and then ultimately the recommendation coming out of Public Works dealt not only with what we're experiencing right now, but what we know we're going to be experiencing over the next couple of years as it relates to the absolute need for an increased staff. And if you're well aware of the planning department and the building, the facilities that they're working out of is becoming inadequate for the county's needs and the planning department's needs. So we're going to be looking at somehow finding a facility or building a facility that's going to be able to house our planning department in the future. So the revenues that this would be generating would not only meet the needs, but would also anticipate what we're going to be facing as a county over the next couple of years with an increased staff and also building of sorts.
Be a break even at this point, or a break even plus 10%, or what, any sense for where we are?
It's break even plus, and I'm not 100% sure what that plus is going to be. You could see from building permits, it's $1 million. You know, in our anticipated budget, that's really kind of a drop in the bucket. But the mayor may have some comments that he wants to say. And I didn't really mean to put words in the mayor's mouth, but.
You didn't. So based on the 22-23 budget, it's plus. But based on the proposed budget and the expected expenditure for meeting the growth needs of these three departments, it'll be back to break even. So we're trying to anticipate the needs of the departments, the three departments, and the growth that is sorely needed in manpower, especially in planning and engineering. So I expect we'll be back to break even in a year or two. So we're trying to anticipate both, as Chairman Phillips said, the move that needs to be made because they're out of space in Goldstein. Goldstein building is totally inadequate, and also additional people in engineering and in stormwater.
But take into account if we decide to add a person to do inspections on our buildings for like the PBA, you know, we were talking about having a person to oversee our
That's an excellent point, and that would be an additional justification that we didn't take into account, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question, Commissioner. I believe it did. Any other comments from the committee or any more presentation, Doug? Mike? Okay, so we've got a decision to make in front of us, and I'm not sure that, I think y'all got the handout I saw at Public Works the other night. So are there any other questions from the committee?
Has this been reviewed? Is there any kind of public hearing or anything that has to go through for this kind of a change?
I'm not aware that we need to have a public hearing on this. Now, of course, all our meetings are public, so, you know, the public has a opportunity to see this. And of course, they can call us and comment if they want to.
Let me just say that Public Works met, I believe it was Tuesday night, Mr. Chairman, and the recommendation from Public Works was an approval and forwarded on to this committee with a positive recommendation.
And it was, and that passed unanimously. And that was actually option 2. Is that what y'all have on your pads, or I'm not seeing on my pad? Okay, so option 2 is what's in front of you now. If any of you want to look at that lower option, or you have a recommendation, I'm all ears.
I'm going to make the motion that we send this on to the full commission on the option 2.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? And a second.
Your option 2, I'm not.
Put an implementation date on that motion.
If you don't mind, add July 1st implementation date on that, Commissioner, if that's okay with your motion.
That'll be fine.
Could you clarify option 2? I'm not seeing option 2.
Doug will explain it for you. We've got a second.
Thank you. Yeah, the handout that you have on your iPads tonight is a little bit different from what was given to Public Works the other day. There were 2 options on the document that Public Works had. They took option 2, which was the alternate fees. What you're seeing on your iPads tonight is that option 2. The proposed fees next to the current fees, the proposed fees was the option 2. So that's what you're looking at tonight.
Was the option 2 higher than the option 1? Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Call roll.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
No.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. All right, gentlemen and ladies, thank you for your help. The next thing on our item, agenda is item 29, which is the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority budget. And just for you new guys that you're seeing this is something that, you know, their budget, they set themselves, but we have to make sure we are required to overview it since it's a joint authority. So that's basically, Michael, you might explain a little better than me, but.
Excuse me, they are a joint authority, so the budget you see in front of you is their budget. It does not flow through our books. The only portion of this that flows through our books is the debt payment that they make to us, and that flows through our Fund 119 that you will see when we go over the budget overview. But none of this goes through our books. Their budget is balanced. They're not requesting anything additional from us, but the debt we borrow on their behalf does flow through us, but nothing else does.
And this budget does cover that debt.
That is correct.
Got a moment to look over that. This is something that we do each year, so. Any questions, Commissioner?
I was curious what commissioner's expense is.
I'm sorry?
What commissioner's expense is? And it's under other expenses, 9030. And it's for 30,000. Any idea?
It's probably their board.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve their budget, which again, I'll repeat, does have the money in it to repay the debt that we have loaned them. Have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
In a second, Commissioner Sereno. Any further discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Gooch? Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. We're going to skip the proposed budget overview and move it to last. We have got item on 31, item A, a general fund budget amendment for a transfer station. And this actually has to do with $50,000 for the design on a road where it intersects Jefferson Pike and Landfill Road. This was discussed the other night in Bishop, please.
Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Bishop Wagner. I'm the Rutherford County Solid Waste Director. Tonight, bring for you a budget amendment for in the amount of $50,000 from transfers to other funds, which is a landfill fund, from the Committed for Public Health and Welfare Fund, which is also a landfill fund. It's the money that we've utilized for the planning, design, and engineering of the transfer station. This is an extension of that project, which would be planning and engineering for the end of Landfill Road. Currently has a pole that's in the middle of the road that makes ingress and egress kind of complicated there. Middle Tennessee Electric is going to be moving that pole, and that gives us some options there at that intersection for widening that to add some turn-in lanes and making it more congruent with Antler Drive, which is across the street, and looking at options for how we can control traffic flow for that project in the future. Any questions?
Chairman Harris.
One of the things, I was watching Public Works the other night, and Commissioner James made just a ridiculous comment where he said, it's laughable that we want to fund a transfer station, that we question it. I question why we need a transfer station. And let me tell you why I say that. Mayor Carr has done on newspapers, TVs, radios, says 2 years. You said 2 years up. But neither one of you are qualified to say that. Now, Republic says it's 5 years. But then Chairman Cush said they're not always being truthful. Fair. It doesn't mean that either one of y'all are right or wrong, but we don't know. So here's what I called the commissioner, Jeff Phillips, and I said, how can we get this to where we know exactly when this landfill is going to close? Because neither one of y'all know. I don't know. And y'all are saying Republic don't know, but why don't we get a third party? So I asked Jeff to look into that. And Jeff has got in touch with TDAC, and they're going to come and they're going to give us a fair assessment of what lifespan is of this landfill. So we're asking for $25 million for a transfer station that I don't see in one of the most volatile budget years in decades for this county. Mayor said it. He said it's going to, there could be a tax rate that could choke a horse. That was his comment. Why are we spending $25 million? Now, we need to have somebody that represents not us, not them, somebody else to tell us how long this lifespan is, because we don't know. Nobody's qualified. The only person that I think is qualified is Republic, because they are the ones that control the flow of the trash that comes into it. But we don't, we got a big time credibility problem with them. A lot of y'all do. So let's don't take their word. Let's go to TDAC. Let's get a report from TDAC. Let's wait on this until we get a report. What harm will it do? What harm can it do? All I'm simply saying is we need to defer this to next month, to let TDAC do their report and give us a correct time span on when this is closing. Because I just don't understand, if it is 5 years, why are we rushing to spend $25 million? I don't understand that. Do I think a transfer station is needed? Maybe. There's so many things that's going on right now with this landfill, we don't know.
We'll recognize the mayor.
So when I'm done, he can talk. Is that okay?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were. I thought you were through.
My point is that I think we need to put the brakes on this. Let's look at this. Let's let TDAC come in, let them do their report, and then we can go from there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. We expect the amount to be $20 million, not 25. You're correct when you say that I'm not an expert and I'm not qualified to make that assessment. I never did. As this committee will recall, and as well, maybe it wasn't this committee, but it certainly was the full commission in Public Works. Back in October of last year, I reached out to not only Bishop Wagner, but to Mac Nolan and Becky Caldwell. Becky Caldwell is a 20-year consultant in solid waste management. We've retained her services as well as Murfreesboro. So you're absolutely right. I'm not qualified, and I never said I was, nor did I imply that I was. What I did is I sought out 3 professional opinions, the opinions that I knew of, that could give 3 independent estimates separately, and that's what they did, and I presented before the county commission a letter back in October saying that. With regard to TDAC, being the former assistant commissioner at TDAC, the solid waste, and Bishop, you may correct me here, please, because I want to be absolutely correct in this regard. With regard to our landfills in Tennessee, it's a self-reporting mechanism. So the only data that TDAC has is that data that is reported by Republic. And so I agree with you. There is a serious integrity issue based on past history and public comments from Republic with regard to the capacity and future capacity of that landfill. And so my strong recommendation about a transfer station, and I've been unambiguous in that regard, Commissioner, you're exactly right, was based on the risk associated with us not doing anything and then getting into a situation where we didn't have the time available to us to do something. So it was based on that. But you're absolutely right. We are making a best educated guess on the lifespan of that landfill, and the data coming out of Republic for the last 6 or 8 years has been inconsistent and unreliable at best. And so I'm just trying to avoid a crisis. So thank you.
Do you not agree that maybe we should have a third party look into this? I mean, I don't think you're right. I don't think they're right. So I'm not sitting here in a contest with you I'm not trying to show you up. I'm just telling you you're not qualified to make that assessment. Neither one of you are.
Well, I haven't made an assessment.
Let me finish and I'll let you talk. I'm just saying that we got to make a 25, okay, you said 20 million. I've heard 25, but I'm going to go with you, 20 million. We got to make a $20 million decision. And it could be, we could do it 3 years from now. We could do it 2 years from now. We could do it this year. But I don't understand until we actually know when that landfill is going to close that we need to make this at this time of the budget. Mayor, you just sent out an email to everybody saying we need to slow down on what, renovations and all that stuff, building. You sent an email out. Yeah, you did. So you're asking departments to not build or not do any expansions. Did you not?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay, I'm going to show you that email.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
So that's what I'm trying to say is this not something that we can hold off on until we get through this rough year and just see where we're at on that? Do we have to make that decision right now for this budget coming up?
So if I may answer that question, Chairman. First off, I'd like to make a clarification about qualifications. I have a bachelor's degree in geology and a master's degree in environmental geosystems. I worked for 3 years for Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation prior to coming to this role. So I do take a bit of offense to the lack of my qualifications.
I'm just telling you right now, you're not qualified.
Chairman Harris.
You're not qualified.
I was appointed, you're out of order, sir. I was appointed to this position based on my expertise, and I provided honest and forthcoming information to the estimates to the best of my ability. That data has also been concurred by other people that are unrelated to the county directly, that are also professionals in this industry. So what I'm telling you is that the data that I provided is in the best interest of Rutherford County to the best of my understanding. Could Republic Services BFI change the knob of the amount of material that they take in or don't? Yes, they could do that. What our situation is, and the reason that I was approached with this idea, and why I strongly suggest that this is the path forward for Rutherford County and the future of Rutherford County, is because that landfill is going to close. And we don't have any control over when that time is going to happen. We get a lot of promises from the public services people about what their estimates are. We get a lot of information from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation on what those estimates are. The reality is they are all different. Our best option is to be prepared for what happens when that landfill closes. The model that we are discussing is an option for us to continue to dispose of our residential waste as a free fee disposal, as is in our contract with Republic Services, while opening up the option to manage Rutherford County generated commercial waste. That generates revenue to the solid waste department. It is a plus for us. And if we purchase that property, if we purchase that project now, and yes, $20 million has been the number since day one, and I don't believe that it will be $20 million. I'm working at my utmost to ensure that it is as cost-effective as possible to the citizens of Rutherford County. But the reality is that if we wait 4 or 5 years, based on the information that's provided to us by a company that does not have the county's best interest, no matter what they may say on the news, no matter how they may approach you as individuals, their goal is to sell airspace. Their goal is to expand that landfill. Their goal is to continue to take waste from outside of Rutherford County and bury it here. This commission and others before it have stated clearly that they did not want to bury outside waste inside of this county. That was what it was told from the beginning of taking this job, that the goal was here, and this is how we achieve that goal. If there is another idea that's better than that, I'd welcome to hear it, but I promise you that the idea of let's wait is not a better idea than this. Thank you.
Chairman Harris, you're recognized.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So upon recollection, you're correct. I did send out a letter. I couldn't recall what email you're referring to. It was an email that Adam Dodd, head of maintenance, asked me to send out now because we were getting a number of renovation requests and we wanted to get through the budget cycle. So you're correct. I did send out an email like that.
Well, first of all, shouldn't have got mad. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I'm not saying you ain't qualified. I think you're very qualified in the job you're at. I think you're a good director. But you don't know. You don't know, Bishop, and I don't know. He don't know. Anybody don't know. We need a third party to come in. Now, you said wait is the worst thing to do, right? Okay, I'm going to look at it this way. Why do we not even look at Republic as being an option? Now, let me say this before you get up to
Sure.
I remember about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, you was in such a bind where we couldn't get rid of our trash. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And they bailed you out. They came and helped you, did they not?
No,
yes
actually what happened was they said that they would do some work for us for hauling to the hill yard, but they didn't supply enough manpower to be able to continue to do it, and I ended up coming up with solutions. Actually, the Public Works Committee and some of the options that we did to go through with the high-capacity compactors and some of the changes that we've done in there actually got us through that. I didn't spend a third of that $30,000 that was allocated on that because they weren't providing the service.
Yeah, but they did provide some, right?
It's not a different. It's not a difference. It's not a different. What they offered was not anything that they wouldn't offer to a private company. They want us to believe, and I'm trying not to be adversarial for a company that we've had, but the reality is this: they are a business, and they're providing the same service that they're going to do to any other business. They're working within their contract, and their contract is to accept residential waste from us free of charge for a host fee. And we receive a host fee. That host fee agreement money, they pay that every year like they're supposed to. They take my waste as we bring it up there that's generated residentially as they're supposed to, and I have no problems with that. I get along very well, I have a good working relationship with Mike Clausen. But the reality is this: that landfill will close. And the only entity that has power on, and Mike has said this in many meetings, he's given different end dates, and he'll say this every time he says it, is that there are factors that they control which can control the closure of that landfill. The biggest thing is the import of exterior waste. We generated 428,000 tons of waste within Rutherford County last year. The $1.3 million that were deposited on, the rest of it came from other counties. They control that waste. They control those trucks that come in. They can control the waste that comes out. They have not shown, over the history of the time that I've been here, and the history when I was with the state, where I was looking at this data from the other perspective, which would be in participation with calculating the end-of-life analysis, that they are not planning on slowing down. They're eating up their airspace to supply their clients, the other entities that they grab waste from, and they're making their money in doing it. It's their business. I have no problem with that. My job is to take care of the citizens of Rutherford County for the future. And if we buy a building, if we can get a building built.
Just a moment. Guys, I don't mind either one of you talking, but it's going to be one at a time.
If we can get a building, built for $15, $20 million today, I will promise you, in 5 years, if we look at some of the rates, I think we can ask some of the planning and engineering folks at what the property values have increased. We're looking at another 30% possibly in that 5 years. Is that best for the taxpayer? And we could be generating revenue in the time that we're waiting with that from the commercial activities. That's what I'm saying. Let's look at this from a full cost accounting perspective, and not if Republic Services builds a transfer station, which they very well may. We're no better than we are now. We're worse because the landfill will be closed and we won't be getting a host fee agreement, and we'll be forced to pay tipping fees at their rates for the readable cleanup that Mr. Clausen came on in multiple areas and mentioned that they were going to help the community out. They've charged us $101,000.
So there is no deal, nothing that Republic can do to make this better. You're 100% that they're Darth Vader and they're going to eat our kids. Is that what you're saying?
No, sir. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is It is not in Rutherford County's best interest to continue to think that this private landfill that we've been in business with for 30 years and has grown to capacity, that's looking for expansion, is going to be able to fit our needs or the needs of the region any longer. We have to prepare for that landfill's closure, and we have to get some agreements and some arrangements together now, because there's a bigger picture here too, Chairman. When Middle Point closes, 4 years, 10 years, whatever they say it's going to be, every single county that surrounds us, that's in Middle Tennessee, is going to be fighting for the available airspace at the rest of the remaining landfills. We need to get in a position where we're ahead of that charge. That saves us from having real garbage emergencies, potentially having to haul waste out of state at a tremendous cost. So all of these, and if given time, I can break these down and give a presentation to show you what that looks like. But unfortunately, the meeting on Tuesday, when I came in, it felt like Republic Services has talked to the commissioners, and I had nobody come and contact me to ask me any of the follow-up questions, which I welcome you to come to talk to me about these things. This is what I do.
Bishop, you're one factor in the equation. You're just one factor, all right? I think Republic is able, if we sit down and talk, we at least should hear them out. We at least should hear what they might have up. I mean, I sit there and talk to them, and I said some things that were very, very beneficial to this county, and they were up for that. Now, I'm not saying that's the way to go. I'm just telling you we have to give people an opportunity to let us know what's going on. My question is, is it necessary, going all the way back to the beginning, is it necessary that we should build a transfer station this year?
I believe we need to continue the course at the rate we're doing it. I mean, even looking at the convenience center construction rates, based on what we anticipated they'd be and the fact that I don't have the first one of them open yet, just on the way things are moving right now. If we get in the books, get our engineering stuff down, we've got promises of between 15 and 24 months for construction. We could be looking at 3 years maybe if things drag out in a similar phase to what they're dragging out now with some of the convenience center stuff. Their last statement, the current deadline that's at TDEC, has them placed in the end of 2026. So that's 3.5 years. So we're talking about a year. And honestly, in a year, that would give us time to be able to get the commercial portion of our collection and get our C&D stuff figured out to where we're getting some diversion out of that and getting some collection and get that back in the game, because currently we're not able to manage construction and demolition debris. We have to send that all to Middle Point landfill, and that's a negative benefit it's a deficit to our citizens. I'd like to get these things happening and starting to get some revenue that's coming in that's positive to the solid waste that can help us be sustainable, so that we're not in a position where we're having to come to the general fund every budget year and ask them for, what was an $8.4 million budget last year. As we grow, as we get more schools, as we get more people that come in, as these things continue to increase, these costs, disposing, and as landfills fill up, the tipping fees are going to go up. These costs are going to increase, and we have to be prepared for that eventuality. That's what I'm trying to do for you. And all I ask is that, I've been in the room, we've talked with Republic Services in times before. They come with great ideas, but there's never been anything that's been brought before me that's looked anything like a proposal. There's been a lot of, we'd like to see this, come back with some numbers, and they never do. Why? What's their game? What's their goal? Their goal, my goal is to find a sustainable solution for...
Guys, one at a time.
My goal is a sustainable solid waste solution for the citizens of Rutherford County. Once we achieve that sustainable solid waste solution for the citizens of Rutherford County, I will feel like I've completed my mission.
Chairman Harris, anything else? No, sir. Recognize the mayor.
Yeah, real quick. So very early on, this commission reached out to me in September and October to exhaust every reasonable avenue with certain constraints about negotiating with Republic. Jamie Amick, who's the president of the Southeast Division of Republic, has been in my office with Mike Classen on several occasions, but I was given explicit instructions that in order to negotiate with Republic, we would no longer accept waste from outside Rutherford County, specifically Davidson County. And Mr. Amick and I had numerous conversations on that, and he insisted, absolutely insisted, that his business model included waste from Davidson County. And it was at that point I said, Jamie, we're at an impasse. And he goes, well, how do we get past the impasse? And I said, the last thing I told Mr. Amick was, could you do a Rutherford County only facility? I asked him that point blank in my office with Mr. Clausen there. He said, you cannot afford it. I said, that's not your decision to make. Get me a number for a Rutherford County only solution. That was the last time we spoke on it. And so my sense is that they, at that point in time, if you'll recall, they were talking about expanding down Jefferson Pike on the 90 acres down Jefferson Pike between where the ball fields are. And all of a sudden, in the last 6 months, we haven't heard anything about expanding down Jefferson Pike. And they were telling us they absolutely could expand down Jefferson Pike. But if you go down Jefferson Pike, Commissioner Piercy, it's not a secret why they can't expand down Jefferson Pike, because there's no soil down Jefferson Pike. They have to have the V that we own to expand. That's a decision that this body will make, but it was my clear understanding from this body that we no longer wanted to accept trash from outside the county, but specifically from Davidson County, since that's where the majority of the solid waste was coming from. And so now we're back to discussing it, which I think is fine. I think we can always discuss this situation. I don't think we should ever not discuss it. But they have never, Mr. Amick has not reached back out to me. Maybe he's talked to some of you all, but he's not reached out to me about what a solution looks like or what a Rutherford County only solution would look like. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I've had meetings with Jamie, and Nashville can be off the table. It's got 2 more years left on the contract, and there is a way to get out of that. That's him telling me. That's you telling me. I'm just, that's what I'm telling you. He said to me. Now, let me ask you this.
And I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that.
But let me ask you this. Can Republic go up on their landfill?
Yes, Republic may be able to go up.
How many years will that add?
They say that they'll be done at the end of 2027.
But they can go up, though.
First quarter of 2027.
But they can go up. That's still an option.
I don't know what their elevation is, so I can't tell you definitively how high they can go up.
They can go up.
I would say that if they could go up, and if that is accurate, it would have been reflected in the statements that Republic Services had made on their end-of-life expectancy. It's all based on the available airspace in their landfill.
Okay. Chairman Phillips, I want to recognize you. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman Harris, are you? Yes, sir, I'm done. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick clarification to what Commissioner Harris said. I didn't contact TDAC. I contacted Republic through their attorney and asked for some clarification as it related to a statement that was made at Public Works Tuesday night that TDAC had even confirmed what the county was saying as far as 18 months to 2 years maximum life. So from what you said the other night, it wasn't just you, it wasn't just Mac Nolan, but TDAC also was confirming that we only had a couple of years left. So I took that because Republic was telling me we've got in excess of 5 years at the current level. So I took that, called the attorney from Republic, and said there's a big difference here. What our county is saying and what you're saying are way off. It's more than the double. And they indicated that that TDAC was supporting what they were saying, and I asked, can you get TDAC back out there And that's what they're working on right now in the immediate future. Get TDAC back out to do an evaluation of the life of that landfill at the current levels of garbage that's coming in there. So I didn't contact them, but I contacted the public through their attorney, and their attorney's contacting TDAC and is going to get back with us as a county as to when that evaluation would be made. Also, in the question that I raised at Public Works was kind of what Commissioner Harris was saying. Do we need to do that? If there are over 5 years left, do we need to be spending that money this year? And can we put it off? Because of all the concerns that we've had with debt service, do we need to be spending that money this year? You and the mayor both went through that process with me, and I'm hearing from your perspective why you decided, why you think we needed to do that. All I wanted to do was confer with Republic through that state agency as to what the life expectancy of that landfill is. I want to know what it is, and I want it verified what it is. And I understand from your perspective exactly why you want that transfer station built and built. And the bottom line was, you cannot rely on what Republic is telling us. And I'm saying that I want to be able to rely not only on what you're telling us, but I also want to be able to rely on telling us as well. And I spent 2 different 4-hour periods of time at that landfill, and from what they showed me as to what they expected the next 5 to 5.5 to 6 years to look like, that there was plenty of room for that life expectancy. So that's the reason that I called them and asked for that evaluation from a state agency, which is TDAC, to give us some concrete numbers as to what that year looks like. And what Republic also says is that we're not going to pull the rug out on anybody. This is a business, and we're going to operate that business until the business is not operable anymore, which means that they're going to fill that landfill up, and if they can't get their expansion, they're going to run it until it's full and then shut down. And I think that was the question that I was asking the other night, and perspective out of Harris, that do we really need to be spending that $20 million this year? Can we wait till next year or year after next or even the year after that and spend it at that particular point in time? Saving money, the cost of construction may go up, we understand that, but also our debt service is going to go up this year if we build that money this year, and may be able to cut back on the potential property taxes that we're going to be doing if we can put that thing off a little bit. And that was my only question. I'm not saying that the landfill won't close. I'm not saying that we don't want outside garbage coming in. I'm not saying any of that. The simple question I tried to ask the other night was, must we build that transfer station this year, and can we delay it? It's kind of similar to what sometimes we ask ask our school board to say, can we delay building that elementary school a year or two? Can we do it? And most of the time the answer is no, but most of the time, and we listen to them, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we say, we're not building it.
If I may, there was maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding from what I said on Tuesday night about the TDEC, and what I'd said was that using their end-of-life survey analysis, and it comes out every year for a basis. What I did was I drew a retention curve based on the changes every time that it's reported, and it seems that they lose 1.77 years of life per every report year. So if you take that curve out, that'll put you to between 24 and 36 months when I ran the numbers for it. So what I believe you'll see when they
when TDEC comes back out and does their analysis, is you're going to see something similar to what they've stated. That was probably going to put them in a 3.5 year range. It's all, again, it's all predicated on how fast they fill the material into that location, and they have the control of the knob. And I like you told me yesterday, I do appreciate your passion and your understanding. I know that you know this problem well, and I don't want to be diminishing to anyone on this thing. I just want to try to gain some of your confidence and understanding that I think of nothing other than this. This is my number one goal. And if there's a better way to do it, I want to hear it. And I would welcome hearing it from any party, but what I'm afraid of is that we'll get in a situation where we're not going to have any options. And frankly, I don't want to be the solid waste director that's left holding the bag when that happens.
Just one quick follow-up. You mentioned that storm damage that was hauled away to the landfill.
Yes.
We paid a tipping fee in excess of $100,000 for that.
That's the charged fee that will be charged, we'll be paying that fee and then be requesting reimbursement from the FEMA dollars. I forward that on to the mayor's office today.
So we're expecting a tipping fee charge in excess of $100,000 to take storm damage to Republic. That's what we're expecting them to charge us.
Yes.
That also gives me some ammunition to talk to Republic about. And once again, I appreciate your information. Let me see if I can get us back to this.
Thank you.
This particular budget amendment item. What we're asking for is $50,000 to do an intersection road improvement. It really is not talking about building a transfer station at this particular point in time, correct?
Correct.
And even if we didn't build a transfer station, this particular intersection would probably need to be improved because it aligns with our convenience center. Is that not correct?
Convenience center and the solid waste operations are down Landfill Road.
So even if we didn't build a transfer station at some point in the future, this $50,000 that we're allocating or proposing to allocate tonight is just for an intersection improvement. Is that correct?
Just the design and planning for it, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, wait a minute. Let me let this man speak, and I'll come right back to you, Chairman Harris.
I just had a question for clarification, and Michael can probably help. What's the debt service cost for $20 million or to finance it? I've actually got 2 texts on that so far. And so, what's the debt service cost for? Like a penny or two, maybe, at the most? A third of a penny, something like that?
At a conservative 4% interest rate, because right now municipal bond rates are a little below that, but at 4%, it would be $20 million over 20 years would be $1.4 million per year.
So 1 penny.
Yes, or less. Technically, it's less than 1 penny.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted that clarification, and I'll be glad to make a motion to approve this once.
Let me let Commissioner Harris speak. He had asked to speak, and then.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this, what you're asking for, can actually help improve the convenience center as well. So if we didn't build a transfer station, we really need to do this right here.
Yes, that's why it was a separate from the planning, design, engineering.
And I'd like to walk in on that too. We have looked at several different options for the property out there on Landfill Road. A transfer station being one of them. We've also looked at expanding the convenience center back there. We might do a building, I forget the name of them, where we basically sort stuff, something that
Materials recovery facility.
Exactly. Anyway, I agree that this intersection is something that we've actually talked about in the past at Public Works, and I think that it needs to be addressed. Having said that, we'll go back to Commissioner Irvin. You said you had a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I'm going to second it with a comment.
I heard a second, so now you can comment.
We can sit right here at this table like we have for the last 8 years and discuss this up one side and down the other one. He said this, they said that. Mr. Harris kind of contradicted himself when he said, you don't know, nobody knows, but yet we're going to see TDAC, and they know. TDAC's going to tell you an estimation of their garbage intake today. That's what you'll get, of their life expectancy. That's all they can do, because they have no idea how they'll speed the flow up, how they'll slow the flow down of garbage. They've got full control of it. But anyway, this road is important for a transfer station. It would also be important when they call Mayor Carr and tell him, Mayor Carr, we've got a month that we're going to be closed here and we can't take any garbage because we've got major breakdowns with our gas system, or all our bulldozers are down but one, or all our help's walked off. Then we've got to have an emergency place to dump and load our trash, and they've already checked in on that. I think Bishop has what it similar cost to make an emergency transfer station. Boys, you sit here and you don't realize we have nowhere to take our trash if those gates shut tomorrow. We can't continue to wait. We can't continue to sit here and say, what if? Because you're going to get caught with your pants down, and everybody's going to have to keep their trash at home until we can come up with some kind of instant solution. I'm not arguing with anything y'all said, but I'm stating some facts here that you can't argue back that's not right. We have nothing for a plan B other than try to negotiate a contract with Republic should they get to expand, and lo and behold, they'll be the first one come to the table to negotiate the contract, because we're the only county with free tipping, I'd say, in the United States, and they want to get rid of that. Anything they do will be at a cost. It will not be free anymore. They'll beat you to the table on negotiating. They'll be there first because they want you gone off that free side. Thank you.
Well, we beat this dog pretty hard tonight. I'm about ready to hear a vote on that unless I see an objection from anybody from the committee. Anybody else have a comment they want to make? Hearing none, call roll.
Gooch.
Yes.
Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy.
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Pete.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next item, Juvenile Court Child Support Magistrate Grant.
So the reason this grant's in our other business is we just got this contract this week from the state. This will be for next budget year. We currently have this, and I have had this grant for several years. This grant covers a portion of salary for a juvenile court magistrate that we currently employ. This grant does have a match. That match is currently budgeted in our current budget, and it is budgeted in the budget that's going to be presented to you tonight. If this is not approved, we can take that out, but that's how it is currently budgeted. It budgets approximately 30%. Our portion is approximately 30%. The state covers the 60% portion of this grant for the juvenile court magistrate.
How much is it, Mr. Chairman?
The grant is for $59,118, and then we cover $30,000.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the grant.
Second.
I had a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Can we clarify the second? I couldn't hear. Oh, Commissioner Johnson.
Okay. Commissioner Gooch.
Yes.
Commissioner Harris. Yes. Commissioner Irvin.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy.
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Pete.
All right, at this time, we were going to look at an overview. I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess. The next thing that we've got on our business tonight is a proposed budget overview. And guys, I want to take a moment. I've asked Michael, since our meeting has taken a little bit longer than I had anticipated, to make this overview as streamlined as possible. Now, we will not be voting on anything on the budget tonight. Our next budget meeting is next Tuesday, at which time we will start into our budget as we normally do and look at it piece by piece. So if there are any questions or anything going on at that time, anyway, I'm going to ask Michael, like I said, to streamline this, and we will pick back up Tuesday night with any questions that you've got. Now, if there's anybody on the committee that has questions, of course, you will be recognized. But Michael, please go ahead.
So the first thing, I'm just going to go through what's in your books. I think that's the easiest, so that way y'all kind of know where everything is. And then for those of y'all who've been on the budget committee in the past, it's set up very similar with a few changes. But if you open your books, you'll see an index or a table of contents right there on the first page. It's color-coded and number-coded, and it's really just going to be, one for each fund. A couple of them have the funds combined with revenues and expenditures, and a couple of the bigger funds, like the general fund, are broke out between revenues and expenditures. They'll have two different tabs. But if you will open the book and flip past that title page, that first page, and then next you're going to notice a budget directory. That just is trying to help you if you're looking for a certain department. That'll help you find that a little quicker, but that's what that page is. The next page is the budget calendar that was approved back in, I believe it was December or January. The front side of that is the budget calendar as a whole for the budget process, and the back page of that is the meeting schedule for this budget committee. On that budget committee, you'll see that next Tuesday, May 9th, we start going through it by department and by fund. That is subject to change a little bit, but that's kind of how we have it laid out, as it has been in the past. And then the next page is the question everybody always asks me, what's the penny going to bring? What's our property tax estimate? That is on the next page. So just for the record, our current estimate as of today for what the penny will bring next year is $1,496,121 for the county. And the school's penny will bring $1,279,782 for the school system. Now, I will keep in mind that just like as in prior years, we will continue to pull assessment data to see if that changes to have the most accurate data. But as of today, that is what we anticipate the penny bringing.
Could you explain the difference between the general and school?
So the difference in the county and schools is based on what's called the ADA rate that the Department of Education sets. That is weighted. But that difference we share 85.54% of all local revenues, and property tax is a local revenue. We get 14.46% is the portion we share with the city of all local revenues. So that's the portion we share with the Murfreesboro City School System. And again, if you ever see that weighted rate, it's going to show that we have 52 or 53,000 kids. We do not. It is weighted heavier on special education, Title I, CTE, programs like that, those types of things. So just to clarify that. Now, while we're still on that page, I want to go ahead and point out one thing, and I'm going to touch on it again here in a minute. But working very well with the school system, I've worked with Brian, my counterpart over there. We've met with Dr. Sullivan and the mayor. And one of the things that the school system requested was that they did not want anything over maintenance of effort. They only wanted their maintenance of effort. So, as you'll look on here, you're going to see a 2022 adopted tax rate and a 2023 proposed tax rate. The difference in those is where we have moved pennies from the school system to debt service to pay for debt. So that would give them, that is a reduction, but still keeps them their maintenance of effort. So we were able to move approximately almost 10.5 pennies. So 1.104, which is almost 10.5 pennies, we were able to move from Fund 141 and Fund 177 down into our debt service. Now, I will tell you some good news there is that will take care of the debt for the school system. I do not anticipate any additional tax revenue needed to take care of that in the form of property tax increase. So I do want to thank the school system. They've worked really hard on that. Me and Brian worked really hard to come up with that dollar amount. The next page is going to be...
we want to thank Dr. Sullivan also. So
We worked very diligent, I will say, up until, I believe I called Dr. Sullivan with a revenue adjustment this week. I believe it was yesterday or the day before on a number change. So we've worked really hard on that, and I do appreciate that a lot. And then the next thing is a statement of proposed operations. Now, I know that sheet is small, but it has a lot of important data on there. And so this is going to be the summary of kind of what we're looking at with revenues and expenses. And I'm going to go down through it pretty quick because we're going to talk in much more detail about it in the coming weeks. But I do want to point out a couple of things on there for you. So it's going to go in order of fund. So you'll notice the top row right there is general fund. And again, we've got the property tax rate repeated right there. That's just as a reminder. And then you're going to have an estimated beginning assigned fund balance. That's as of today because we have not closed the year. So the next column is going to be your estimated revenues that we've budgeted. And the column after that is your appropriations or expenditures for next year. And then the next column is going to be your revenue over or under appropriations. So there's your budgeted deficit or surplus. So currently, as of today, there is a budgeted deficit in the county general fund. I'm going to touch on that more in a minute, but I just want you to see that. And the next thing, the next column over there is your percentage of fund balance. So if we do nothing and continue with this recommendation here, your fund balance percentage would be in the 6 to 7% range, and your required fund balance per your fund balance policy is 15%. And then as a reminder, our AAA bond rating would need in the range of 30%. Now, I'm gonna keep touching on a couple more things here because I know there's some questions, but the next fund is solid waste, and all the way down, I will point out the solid waste fund is balanced to zero. Revenues and expenditures match in that fund. That fund last year, I had, I believe, about an $800,000 deficit, and we were able to balance that fund with no additional taxes. The next fund is ambulance service fund. It does have a little bit of a budgeted deficit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into that fund. And then you're going to notice 119 shows a deficit, but there's not actually a deficit. That's where we have debt payments that come over from the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority. Those payments are not receipted as revenue. They're receipted against a note receivable. So it's an accounting thing that shows it as a deficit, but it is not because those are not receipted as a revenue. So I just want to point that out. The next two funds are 121, which is the money we put DEA shared money in from cases the sheriff's office worked, and then 122, our drug control fund. They show a deficit, but that is because in past years they have receipted more money and not spent all of that. So we budget allowing them to spend, at the sheriff's discretion, those funds. But those funds have adequate fund balances to support that. The next one is the highway fund. That is submitted to us by the road board. It is showing a surplus of almost $80,000 budgeted. And then 141 and 143 are not in here because they have not been passed by the school board. And you'll see in your budget calendar, they're required to be to the finance office by, I believe it's May 15th. And then we have a joint meeting with them, I believe it's on the 25th, for them to present their budget to this committee and to Health and Ed. And then 177 is going to be presented to you in summary in this book because the school board will also present their 177. Now, the reason we went ahead and prepared that is because I prepare the revenue for that fund, and that fund needs to balance, so it has been prepared that way in summary, but they will be providing a detailed list of projects to you when they do come over to present that. And then the last fund is our debt service fund. And again, we were able to move some pennies from the school system down into debt service. Now, I will tell you right now that debt service fund is showing a deficit. However, I have accounted for the future elementary school ask that the school system has told us they are bringing in the fall. So that is accounted for in there right now. Also accounted for in there is the $156 million that the county commission approved, I believe it was last month. So all of that is accounted for in there. And you see right now, as of, if everything were to stay the same, we would have a 53% fund balance, and the target really for our AAA rating is 65 to 75%. However, I do not believe we would have a full year's worth of bond payments on that elementary school if that was this body's wish. So I do believe we would get to that, closer to that 65%. So I don't anticipate any new tax revenue needed to go into debt service fund. I do believe it is sufficient how we have it shown here. So flipping on, and I'm trying to go quick because I know you want to get out of here. The next is going to be the positions recommended by the county mayor. And I just want to highlight a couple things here. You're going to see a position summary here on the next page, and we do it by year, by FY21-22, 22-23, and then the mayor's recommendation for 23-24. So you will see that below, and I'm going to hit the highlight. The next year, the mayor is recommending an increase of 84 positions, and you're going to notice at the bottom that it says 82. The difference of that is the highway fund is decreasing by 1 position, and then we had a position budgeted for the finance office for the ERA program that we never filled, and so we took that away. But that's what the summary is going to show, and you will see in the past 2 years we've hired about 190 new people, so that's quite a lot of people, and so that's going to contribute to a lot of what you see in the general fund. And a lot of that is going to be the public health and safety personnel that we've hired. And then this year, the recommendation is for 84 new positions. Now I will tell you all but 5 of them are public safety related, whether it be sheriff's office, fire, or EMS. We will go through that in more detail as we get into the budget, but I have provided you a breakdown of each of those positions that's recommended with their total cost, including insurance, Social Security, Medicare, all of those things. And I will add one thing. For insurance, it's going to seem quite high, but we budget assuming the average of our highest plans because we don't know if they're going to take family coverage single. So I get that question sometimes. I just want to point that out. But again, we have that summarized by fund for you and by account category. In the next tab, and I won't cover every fund, I'm just going to cover the layout of the fund so that you know how the budget book is presented. So tab 1 is going to be the general fund revenue. And on the very front page there, we're going to show you a snapshot of where we are currently in our current budget for FY23. And then you're going to see the department's request and then the mayor's request for next budget year for FY24. And you're going to have this for every fund that's in this book. And then also what we've provided is if there's a deficit in the fund, I've provided what the pennies would be to meet that deficit. That doesn't mean that fund can't absorb that deficit. It just means I'm providing you that information so that you can see what that deficit would mean on a per penny basis. The other thing I want to point out is the mayor has proposed a lift to the pay table of 3.25%, and that is included in both of these amounts that you see presented. And so every fund, then if you flip to the next page, then we're going to have a detailed breakdown per line item of each fund for revenue and expenditures. And every fund will be laid out the same that'll be presented to you. And once the school board presents theirs, I will have an insert for you for your binder so that we can plug that in. And I do want to make a couple of notes. I want to thank my staff who has worked tirelessly to help put all of these numbers together. Even if I know if you don't like some of the numbers in there, I do want to say we worked really hard to make sure they're accurate, and I can't thank my staff enough for helping put all these together. And while, yes, I want to point out one other thing, the general fund deficit does seem large. I want to remind of a couple things of how we got there. Last year, we had about almost $24 million. It was 23.9, I think, of revenue loss funding that helped the general fund to get us there. I don't have that this year to help the general fund. So I just want to point that out. That's one of the reasons where we are today. And then the other thing I want to point out is, and I know this will be up for discussion later, I just want to make note of it, is 2 things. One, this year for the fire department, last year we hired 30 new firefighters. This year they were budgeted for half a year, so we have brought on essentially 15 new positions for this year, and that's approximately $1.1 million. So that's going to be an increase in addition to these new positions. Those are not included in the new positions here because they were already hired. And then one other thing I wanted to point out. Correct. The other thing I wanted to point out is for the public health and safety buildings for this year, we will be opening Las Casas and Walter Hill. So the public safety positions to staff those buildings, I have budgeted at a full year in the numbers you see here. And because I wanted y'all to be able to see what they cost for a full year. And yes, we could cut some of those down, and we can have further discussion about that when we get to those budgets. But I want to keep in mind that you have 2 more public health and safety buildings opening the following year, and that being Del Webb and Christiana. So I put those numbers in there for reference as full years, just so you would have the total cost and what that would look like for a full year. And I know I went fast, but I wanted you to know kind of what was in there. And I know we'll spend several more meeting dates going over this in detail. And with that, I think the mayor will probably have with this being his recommendation, I will turn it over to him.
Just, I know we're tired, it's late. I just want to say that to each individual on the budget committee that as you take this home and review it, absolutely pick up the phone and call me. I'll be glad to sit down with you individually along with Michael to go over any and all questions you have. Mike's worked really, he and staff worked really hard on it. We've been working on this for about 60 days. I want to say one thing. I'm really very proud of all the different departments. I asked them not to bring any increases to their budget other than the things that were kind of baked in, like insurance and fuel and those kind of things that we had, or pension, that we had absolutely no control over. And with but only one exception, they all did that. So they all complied. So this is the same budget they submitted last year with no increases except for those things that, of course, we didn't have control over. So real proud of them and really proud of the work that Mike did. So we're ready to get started. That's all I've got.
And I want to clarify a couple things. The insurance rates that were presented tonight that were an increase are presented in this budget. The second thing that's not in here was the fees that were approved tonight that will go to commission next week. Those increase in fees are not in here. We can definitely add those if they're approved, but at the time we were preparing this, they weren't approved, so we could only base on the facts, the data that we have. So we did do that. And so with that, I will say I think revenues increased at a normal amount, at a pretty standard amount of what they normally increase at. And I will say one of the things that has increased the expenditure is probably faster than a normal growth of property tax or sales tax would definitely be the growth of the infrastructure of this county. That is definitely what's increased faster than the revenue growth on a per percentage basis. But with that, I'll take any questions. I know I went through a lot.
I want to follow up with that. This is a result of trying to pay for growth with property taxes and a bit of kicking can down the road. And in my opinion, in talking with Michael and some of you, we can no longer afford to kick the can any longer. It is what it is. We were hoping for some help out of Nashville. We didn't get it. And as a result, we're going to have to make some difficult choices. But I do believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming freight train. So I think if we do it and do it right, we're going to come out on the other side in much better shape than we went in. So again, Michael Smith and his staff did a phenomenal job. So thank you, Michael.
And I got one thing, and I'm sorry, the one thing that's not in here, and I did ask Dr. Sullivan if I could say this before tonight, because I know it's going to be a question. But as we're looking at the budget as a whole, a lot of what's been talked about is our deficit. I think we looked at last year, and the total deficit, budgeted deficit, was $64 million, and we're trying to cut that, obviously. So we've cut that as best we could on all the other funds, other than I just couldn't get it down on the general fund. But I will tell you, the school's plan is to present I've seen a certain draft of it. It is a balanced budget to zero. Revenues and expenditures match. So we were able to get that down from $28 million deficit to zero. So I do feel good knowing, as you look at this over this weekend and next week, we do anticipate that coming in at a balanced budget, which I think is really good for the county here. So
I want to thank Michael for streamlining this for us. Like I said, it's been a pretty long evening. However, I want to announce that our next meeting is May the 9th at 5:30. That's next Tuesday, and we'll start digging in. But looking forward to getting this done, and I think it's something we can definitely take care of. We'll probably meet in here, but that depends. If we decide we're more comfortable in the other room, I don't mind being in the other room. Usually why we're in here is because we normally have a large crowd, and we had everybody we had in here at the first of the meeting. We'd been standing on each other in there. So for now, we'll meet in here. All right, being no other business, we're adjourned.